Namaste, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on this exciting and interesting panel discussion that we have. I'm absolutely thrilled to have four esteemed panelists here up on stage, so you're in for a treat. The collective experience, the knowledge that they bring to the table is excellent. So I'm very looking forward to this. So my name is Vijay Krishnan. I'm the MD and head of Asia Pacific for Rystad Energy. I'm based in Singapore. I'm very pleased to be here. And it's been a tremendous few days for us. So thank you to the organizers for putting something fantastic together. Well, what we are talking today about is going from pilot to planetary, accelerating the adoption and deployment of CCUS technologies. Now, India is the third largest emitter of CO2 emissions in the world. China and US are sort of leading that. And India presently emits close to 2.65 gigatons of CO2 annually, which is approximately 7% of the world's total CO2 emissions, back in, this is about 5 years ago now and from that stats. But it is significantly smaller compared to China and the US. But we have to applaud the ambition that the Indian government and the policymakers have in terms of setting targets. Mr. Sinha, you were involved in that white paper some years ago as well at COP26, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of setting goals, in terms of how to reduce that. Now, based on Rystad Energy's forecast for this year, global CO2 emissions, we think, will peak, right? And a lot of that is because of technology. A lot of that is also, despite the headwinds, CCUS is going pretty well. So, but what we want to hear from you today, esteemed panelists, is what are the different business models, opportunities, challenges we see that we can potentially fast track this and really grow from good to great, right? So before we go into the questions, we will have opening remarks from each of our panelists. Alex, if I may invite you to say your opening remarks, and then we will go down all the way to Mr. Atanu at the end. Over to you, Alex.
My name is Alex Grant. I work for a company called Equinor. For those of you that don't know it, it's a Norwegian energy company headquartered in Stavanger with operations in around 15 countries around the world. We have three main legs to our strategy. The biggest, largest, sustain that over the next decades. We have offshore wind, building that at the moment. That we're very much in execution phase. We have three major projects, one in Poland, one in the UK, and one in the US, where we're spending in total gross for the three projects over $10 billion building those three, or trying to build the one in the US. And then our third leg is low carbon solutions, as we call it, and the cornerstone of that is carbon capture and storage. And there we are beyond pilots. We now have 4 FID'd full-scale projects, which we are, one we have completed, Northern Lights Phase 1, and 3 we're currently in construction of. 2 of those are in the UK, and the other one is an expansion of Northern Lights. So we are really spending proper dollars, and we're learning a lot about the technologies, how to improve them, but also as important, which I'll speak to do a little bit more later, the economics and how those work and the real economics versus the PowerPoint economics.
Thank you, Alex. Mr. Sinha?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Very distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, my co-panelist, Vijay. When I say the discussion panels on CCUS, I recall 2 years back in Indian Energy Week, I was part of the panel, but the topic there was how to initiate, how to design, conceive the pilots. 2 years back, I'm talking about. And today, you see the title, we are talking about pilots to planetary scale. As Vijay, you said, India is the third largest emitter, 2.65 gigatons per annum. So this requires huge efforts on a scale which only CCUS applications can provide in the effort to decarbonize. So this planetary scale is very important thing, and this scale is I think it won't cover just one project. It will cover many projects, many areas, many basins, many sectors, maybe beyond boundaries of nations also. So where we stand today in India, we are looking for storing, uh, we are starting rather tons of CO2, and we look forward to go to the scale of million tons tomorrow, and maybe gigatons, as you said. India is the third largest emitter, so we need to reach to that gigaton per annum stage. Then only our goal of CCUS for the nation will happen. And there is another issue of once we sequester, it's not question of few years of sequestration. It has to be decades, maybe centuries also. So this, as I see CCUS as a bridge, uh, must be, I can call it, this is a bridge between the carbon intensive reality which we are having in India, and it's a bridge between what we foresee in the net zero future, which every nation, every company has plans to achieve that net zero. So CCUS is definitely a bridge between what we are emitting today and what we aim at 2070. So, and also it's not a mere technology. Uh, it will lead us. Again, it's a bridge between, in Indian context, because we are India is an energy-starved country. So it is a bridge between energy supply, energy fulfillment, and sustainable environment. So I think this is my view at the initial stage. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mr. Sinha. Mr. Gupta, if I can invite you to say your
Yeah,
opening remarks.
thank you, Krishnan, and good morning to you all. Uh, just to add to what Alex said and Sinaji said, I think it's very important to understand that without CCUS, our journey of decarbonization will not be complete. That's the most important fact. So CCUS will have to be taken care of, will have to be implemented come what may. And I think this panel discussion today should throw some light on how to overcome those challenges in the journey of implementing CCUS. Today, I think when you talk of CCUS, we are almost, I think we are perhaps nowhere. The carbon capture is almost insignificant. We have to scale it up without doubt. And as India is one of the fastest growing economies, our industrial sector is already showing phenomenal growth. And with this growth will definitely give us more carbon emissions. And when we talk of all those sectors like the steel, the cement, the oil and gas, and other chemicals, I think the CO2 emissions are going on a rise. So I represent GAIL. Today in GAIL, we could be about 3 million tons of CO2 emission, but there are some projects on the anvil. Once they are complete, I think we could see something like 12 to 13 million tons. But that is again a very small number compared to what we are witnessing as a nation. We will have to discuss today what should be done so that the CCUS becomes integral to all our projects, upcoming projects, new projects, the existing projects, so that the journey towards decarbonization can actually be achieved. I think as organizations, we already have set net zero targets, all of us. We have advanced them. Somebody is doing by 2040, we are doing by 2035. Without CCUS will not be able to achieve net zero. That is very clear. So I think as opening remarks, I would only urge that all of us as industry captains, industry leaders, I think going forward we start collaborating and we start looking at ways and means to see that we scale it up. So that is the agenda today. And let us see, we should be able to discuss at least some aspects of this. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Gupta. Mr. Atanu, over to you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful comments and insights by all of you, and I'll just draw upon what Alex, Mr. Sinha, and Mr. Gupta talked about. So one of the things that we see is that scale is one of the biggest, impactful things and one of the most challenging things, right, in carbon capture around the world, not only in India, right? And so how do we take from pilot to scale of gigaton scale? That's crucial, so absolutely. And there are multiple components which drive how scale can be achieved. People talk about learning curve multipliers, doing many and then getting scale. That's one aspect, but I think there are fundamental challenges and approaches in engineering and economics which drive scale, right, which we need to look at from an India perspective. That's one. Second, I think more importantly, is tied to scale and other aspects has got to do with the economics, right? Economics is fundamentally important, right? I mean, you can have the best technology, but if the economics is not something which works, then it's difficult to implement it, difficult to get it through. So the right kind of economics around the technology stack of the entire CCUS value chain becomes very important, and optimizing the economics across the chain is very important. And that's not only a function of technology, it's a function of how these different CCUS projects are organized, right? Things like hub and cluster models, how do you leverage economics of transportation and economics of storage. So I think that becomes very important in terms of driving adoption. The third thing that we see and is probably important has got to do a lot with financing and bankability, right? Unless there's a risk absorber, right, at scale, to be able to finance the infrastructure required for this at cost of capital which is reasonable to drive economics and adoption, it's very difficult for it to go forward. And so, for example, the work that we did with the policy, around policy with Niti Aayog and others, we talked about something called the Carbon Capture Finance Corporation, which drives, the adoption through the right kind of bankability and financing, which otherwise people would not come forward to. And I think finally, importantly, is to tie all this, it's got to have a business model which works.
Yeah.
And so I think initially it'll start with pilots and then it'll go to projects and larger projects, but eventually it needs to, I think, based on what we see, it needs to be a utility model, right? Just like power, wastewater, and such others. So essentially what it's saying is that the emitter whose core competency is running a corporation, running a manufacturing something, says, I'm going to buy this service from you, right, at a certain cost. And there's a provider which is organized in a way which is able to capture, haul, and store or convert, for that matter, the CO2 into the right kind of element. So I think that business model is very important, and encouraging that business model is driven by financing, driven by economics, driven by scale. And as we talk about planetary scale, going from pilot to planetary scale, I think that the eventual goal, if this is done right, is going to be just like power grids. You'll have CO2 grids, right, which is tying these different emission points together and driving what you call, seamless capture, transmission, and storage, just like power, right? Just like wastewater. So I think that's the eventual goal. I think we should drive the overall adoption at scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think, that's quite lots to get around on in terms of all of your opening remarks, and I think you've touched on quite a few key points here. But I always like to start with why, and so maybe Mr. Gupta, I'm gonna look at you for this in terms of like, why is CCUS important for India? I mean, it's as we've heard, snippets from Alex and Atanu and so on in terms of the challenges and the economics already. We haven't got into it yet. But why is it important, and why must we stay the course on this?
Okay. So I'll just go back to my opening remarks. I already mentioned that CCUS is important for decarbonization. It is important to achieve the net zero targets. As a nation, we want to be completely decarbonized by 2070. We also said that we have to be almost half of what we are producing or emitting today by 2050. But most importantly, see the industries that you have. All these industries like the refineries, the oil sector, the chemicals, the cement and the steel. Now these sectors, they will be CO2 emitters. The reason being because you may do whatever electrification you want to do, but even then, the process or the scheme is such that you will still end up using fossil fuels. And we are growing as a nation. We are growing an economy. The industry is on a trajectory of growth. Now, with this kind of hard-to-abate sectors, we have to devise a strategy so that we can make these sectors sustainable. We cannot say today that I have a steel plant or a power plant and it is emitting CO2, so I strand it. I say, okay, oh, sorry boss, I cannot survive you. We have to survive them. Now when we talk of the renewable energy, we say 50% of country's power is coming from renewables, but then 50% is coming from thermal power plants. So whatever you may do, you will still need that base load going forward. And when you talk of base load capacities in thermal power, CO2 emissions are bound to be there. Now, as a nation, we have to sustain them. We have to survive them. And with their survival is nation's growth. With their survival is employment. With their survival is economic development and everything that we see around us. So therefore, CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage, has to play a critical role in ensuring the longevity of these sectors, these industries, so that, and that is okay, that is number one. Number two, the acceptability of the low carbon products is becoming more and more. You cannot survive with products with high carbon intensity. So you'll have to prove to the world that our products are low carbon products. And that is how you become acceptable. So if we talk of steel exports, we have to produce low carbon steel. We have to produce green steel. So therefore, I think CCUS is extremely crucial for all of us. We'll have to integrate CCUS in our designs, in our project configurations, in our project estimates right from the beginning. We'll come to the challenges of CCUS maybe in the second round. But as of now, that is my take on why CCUS is so important.
Excellent, and I think, India's growth in terms of energy demand has just been phenomenal, and our views is that it's going to be continuing that trajectory out to 2050, and so the additional demand that's coming in, can be met from both by using CCUS. So 100% agree, and I think when we talk about energy security, energy diversity equals energy security, right? If you think about it. So excellent. Thank you very much. So maybe we can hear a little bit from you, Mr. Sinha, in terms of you've talked about the pilots. What are the initiatives? What are the learnings from these pilots that you may wish to share?
Okay.
And all the initiatives that you're doing at ONGC's level. Thank you.
Yeah. As far as CCUS is concerned, for ONGC, we realized the importance of CCUS long back, and because as NOC, as a upstream company, we have the advantage of understanding of subsurface. So So we foresaw that yes, this is going to come, and how to deal with it. Let us prepare ourselves. So we had a multifaceted, I will say, approach towards CCUS in ONGC. We started, or rather screened all the depleted reservoirs, not only depleted, all the even producing reservoirs, which can be a candidate for uh, at this stage enhanced well recovery through CO2. It will definitely add to the sequestration. So we started screening and we completed screening of all those candidate reservoirs. Then we designed pilots. These pilots basically, they are the demonstration projects. Yes, we have moved beyond R&D, and we want to demonstrate that yes, CO2 can be stored safely without any risk in the subsurface. And we had the advantage of, as I said, being upstream company, the understanding of the sinks, their behavior, geological complexities. So this is one part. Third, we went aggressively for the collaborations. We wanted to learn as quickly as possible how the other leading companies are doing CCS or CCUS. We worked with Equinor also, Alex. We went to the Northern Lights. We saw how it is happening, and we worked with many other companies to learn as fast as possible about CCUS. So about the initiatives, what ONGC has taken, we conceived a big project, big in the sense that it's a more than 500 million project and targeting to use 1,500 tons of CO2 per day. But we realized that this kind of project will not be viable at this stage. No company, because at this stage there is no commercial model available in the nation to use that. So we already designed a big project, but we wanted to start with a demonstration project, so that we have done, and very soon the implementation will start on that. So demonstration project, all the studies, all the work on the drawing board is over, and we are ready to go to the field in Western sector to start it will be the first, I think, demonstration project. But at this stage, in Indian context, we need many more demonstration projects. That is need of the hour. That is the need of the hour. So, and we also we have facilitated, because today we do not have any commercial model and policy support. So we have provided our inputs very thoroughly, very in detail inputs to our policy decision makers, to Niti Aayog. We have contributed through many documents which takes the shape of the upcoming commercial model in the country. So this is this status, and we want to really, as Tanu said, there is a very important element that for CCS projects to happen is map the various sources, emissions, and sinks. So we need to have I will say, carbon atlas of the nation, where any industry, whether it is hard to abate industry or any carbon, they need and they easily find an infrastructure where they can offer their CO2, and rest can be taken care by these projects. So I think we are at this stage, and we are very aggressively looking towards partnership, towards collaboration, so that we speed up the implementation part. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think it's very exciting, and I like the idea of partnerships and lessons learned, and you touched on the scalability as well. Atanu also touched on that earlier. I think so, Alex, I'm looking at you because I think the Northern Lights in so many ways has been the Northern Lights for CCUS globally, right? And more than just a metaphor. And it's also the biggest tourist attraction, I think, in Norway. What are your lessons, though? And I think what are you, what can you share from that experience that you all have?
Yeah. So I think fellow panelists have touched on it. It's drawing upon lessons learned elsewhere. And I think lessons learned are not just the successes, it's also learning from the mistakes. And I think every company should do that as they progress along. It's focusing on the mistakes and how to learn from them as much as what's been done right. I'll draw my learnings from three main projects that we've done. The first one is we've been injecting CO2 not for pressure support, for pure disposal for 30 years in the NCS, or just coming up to 30 years. And we've now injected almost 30 million tons of CO2 just for storage. And that was, starting 30 years ago, we had no CO2 targets, there was no discussion, so we weren't doing it because we needed to meet some decarbonisation target. We did it because we thought it was the cheapest way to dispose of the CO2. We had to strip the CO2 out of the gas anyway at Sleipner because it was too CO2 heavy. We had all of this CO2, policy not to vent. Do you send it back to shore? What do you do with it? Cheapest way is to inject it into the ground, and that we worked out was cheaper than paying the carbon tax, the CO2 tax, which there was still one then in Norway. That has taught us a lot, and the big piece that we have is that I'm not pretending it's easy, but storing CO2 is much easier than producing oil and gas. It's much safer as well. So there's still a lot of challenges, of course, but it is a more simple process than producing oil and gas. And the beauty of Norway, I'm an Englishman working for a Norwegian company, but it is massively transparent. So that data that we have, a lot of it is available for anyone to see and learn on being able to store the CO2 safely for a long time. So we have a lot of people working on the technicalities of can you store it safely, but it's not our biggest challenge when it comes to commercialization of CO2. Our biggest challenge is on economics and value chains. And the economics, Northern Lights Phase 1, I'll move on to now, it's expensive. So it's a first of a kind in terms of the first open source carbon capture, but it's cost us a lot of money. The learnings we are taking from it, this by the way is 1.5 million tons per annum of injection and it's fully subscribed. We have 4 dedicated CO2 vessels which sail around to the coast, some in Norway and into Europe, pick up CO2, take it up to Norway and then inject it in the ground, and we charge a fee for that. It cost us around $700 million to build, 750, for 1.5 million tons. So the first, just on a scalability perspective, to sort of give some numbers around it, we've just now sanctioned phase 2. That's 5 million tons. It's going to cost us roughly $700 to $750 million. So just from the phase 1 to phase 2. So first learning scale, it really is a big factor. The second we're learning is on learning by doing technology. So little things, but added up, make a difference. So for example, we've worked out perhaps the CO2 doesn't need to be quite so pure as we first thought when we inject it. So slightly less pure CO2 that you're injecting down, it's cheaper for the emitters who can send with a slightly low quality. It's still high, by the way, but slightly less than we first thought. We're working out that actually we thought you needed to have continuous injection, continuous rates, but maybe there is a bit of variability in the rates. We're now working on, instead of having to bring it to shore to pipe, bring the ship to shore to then pipe it out, can you directly inject it from the vessel? So there's all these technological pieces that we're working on, which again means that new phases, new projects can be cheaper and better. But the third, and by far the most important when it comes to economics, is value chains. So we talk about collaboration, but again, putting that into practice. Let's say we build Northern Lights and we've got our charge, And then the emitter, who needs subsidies from his or her own government, doesn't get them or is late and is 2 years late on the contract. Who pays? We're sat having spent all the money to collect the CO2 and it's not there. So who's taking that risk? Do we say, emitter, you have to pay us even whether or not you've got your project ready, in which case emitter's economics look horrible? Or do we say, we'll take that risk, in which case our economics look horrible? And this is subsidies on both sides, or carbon tax and chains, and then what about the transportation in the middle? What happens if that's not ready? Who's taking the risk on that? And when you start adding up those risks, the project costs, the overall economics, go up massively. In Northern Lights, the government solved it. It said, you companies have to take this risk, or you, Northern Lights, have to take the risk, but here's 80% of the capex. Cash donation. That makes it much easier for us to be able to accommodate the risks. By the way, that risk came to bear. We had Northern Lights ready to take CO2, and none of the projects were ready. But when you have 80% of the capex paid for you, it kind of helps lessen that burden. In the UK, we've FID'd a project, the Endurance Store and the Northern Endurance Partnership. So we are currently building it. It was FID'd, final investment decision, a year ago. There, the UK government hasn't given us any of the capex, but what they've said is, we'll take that risk. So you store, go build your store. You transport, go build your transport. You emitter, go and build your emitter. And you're all worried about if you're ready and someone else isn't ready and you haven't got the value chain and you're sat waiting with a project for years and years, we'll guarantee the revenues or the payments. So it's a different model the UK government has used to the Norwegian model. It will be one that will end up being much cheaper for the UK government if all the projects are ready on time, and it's one that will end up being more expensive for the UK government if there are differences or gaps. But the lowest common denominator will be the one that drives that value chain. To the point already made, we do believe that over time, as it's not point to point, and as you get that grid and system, this risk comes out a lot, because I don't really worry if that power station hasn't got its carbon capture and storage yet, because I'm connected to a big grid of CO2 and I can buy it and it becomes liquid, and it's a much more fungible commodity. So maybe that risk as you build out a system decreases over time, but at the moment, that is the biggest challenge. It's the economics of the value chain, which just make it more expensive. But that, I think, will come down over time.
Thank you. That was very, very informative, Alex. And I think I come from tiny little Singapore, and there's talk about building CCS hub again, but across different jurisdictions. The issue has always been about scale. And again, the government has to come in and do some sort of a backstop and so on, but it's costly. And that's part of the challenges I think we have, right? But I think with India, I think we have, I'm not a proponent of carbon tax at this point in time. I think we're already dealing with very high inflation across so many different things. And so, but there's got to be a different way to kind of incentivize and motivate industry to get into it. And I think therein lies the challenge, I think, from a policymaker's perspective. And you highlighted this point, which I think, I'm a favor of, which is open source. But again, that is another question mark that I think we need to kind of think about how would we do that and apply that in India's context, right? So, but the federal government does have to get involved with this in a bigger way, and I think they are trying their best to do that. So that's been very encouraging. Thank you for that, Alex. Atanu, I think, we always talk about CCS, but the U part is something that I think we kind of sometimes overlook or don't think about. Well, what are your thoughts on the the utilization, and given the scale that we have in India, and I think even if you think about how much could be used or not, right? What are your thoughts? I mean, you've done a lot of work in this area, and love to hear from you on that point.
Sure. Thank you. Yes, so I think on the face of it, utilization will appear very, very appealing, right? Because, you're basically translating CO2 or a waste into value, and that's what it looks at the surface. But here are some of the the facts based on a basic analysis. So if you look at the world and you say, you know what, I could make all the chemicals, major chemicals, like let's say you got plastics, right? Or let's say you got, urea, which is fertilizers from ammonia. Or let's say you got, methanol. So this is like significant amount of what you call chemicals, which dominates the world. If I say through some what you call mechanism, I'm able to use CO2 and hydrogen route to what you call convert all this stuff, right? Capture CO2. Even if you were to do that, let's say if you were to do that, you would only consume or reduce about 3 to 4% of the total CO2 emitted in the world. So 3 to 4% of the CO2, if you take out and convert, it'll be sufficient to what you call, make all the chemicals that you require, right, in the world. So therefore, this is a scaling problem. You cannot, what you call, utilize your way or convert your CO2 into what you call products to decarbonize. It'll only address a very small part. So therefore, storage becomes an essential enabler, right, for scaling carbon capture and decarbonization for different sectors that people talked about, like hard-to-abate sectors, at scale. That's a fundamental, what you call, mathematical reality that you cannot get across. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two is that the economics of converting CO2 into valuable products like a methanol, for example, or mineral aggregates are challenging, right? Unless you have got the underlying constituents like hydrogen, right, at a price, clean hydrogen at a price which makes sense. So for example, if you were to do methanol production from CO2, your cost will be 3 or 4 times more than what it would be from a natural gas-based methanol, right, production. So the question is, how do you mitigate that? You can provide, subsidies, for example, incentives to drive that whole point home, but there's a limit to which you can drive subsidies, right? So therefore, the whole ecosystem of CO2 to value or CO2 utilization is useful, is valid, and can be applied to certain precincts where it makes sense. So for example, a CO2 EOR, that makes sense if the price of oil is right. Again, this is a catch out here, right? I mean, if the CO2 delivered price is more than $45, to the injection, for EOR well, and the price of oil is below 70, it'll not work. So therefore, it becomes production of oil based on the price and the dynamics change. So similarly, CO2 to aggregates, mineral aggregates, is certainly, yes, valuable at scale. So this CO2 to methanol, if hydrogen price is low, right, depending upon where you get the clean hydrogen from, yes, absolutely it'll work, right, at some premium. So I think how you carve the whole thing out in terms of economics, because basically there's something called chemical and physical kinetics and thermodynamics, this is what kills you, right? So you have, CO2 is the most stable state of energy, and you want to bring it up to something else, it just costs you more. So how you do that is very important. And secondly, we got to recognize that, yes, everything's said and done, it has got a limit in terms of how much it can abate in terms of CO2 from the world, because there's the inherent limitation of the amount of chemicals that the world requires and the amount of CO2 that's required for doing that, even if we were to fantasize that I can convert all CO2 into chemicals. So I think those are some things that we want to keep in our context and mind and window before, and storage therefore becomes fundamentally important, right, in terms of technology, exploration, geology, economics, commerce. Just that becomes basic drive. Thank you.
Thank you. And the good news is India is blessed with fantastic storage facilities. I think in some of the geology allows for that in the Cambay Basin and in other areas. I think the studies have been proven to do that. But I'm conscious of time. I think we would have gone on for like several hours. I think easily, given the wealth of experience we have and the passion that you all bring to this topic. But I think just to summarize, I feel like, ladies and gentlemen, CCUS is an important, integral, if I'm going to quote Mr. Gupta, part of the energy transition and in the journey. And this is not transition for the sake of transition, but I think in the sense of like enabling oil and gas to continue to thrive and sort of enabling that sort of the growth in both demand as well as in terms of the economics and wider economy of what India is hoping to achieve. But it is not without its challenges, and I think we've heard that today. And a lot of it is around scalability, economics, and what sort of policy support I think we can do to sort of enable the success. But I'm an eternal optimist, which I think we all have to be if we work in the energy industry. And I'm very optimistic that you know, a couple of years from now, if we were to sit back here, I would see that we would be able to, you know, start not just going from pilot programs to actually sort of delivering on it. And I think, you know, we have good experiences from Equinor and from a lot of other companies all around the world to tap into and develop that further. So with that, I say thank you very much to all my panelists for very insightful and honest conversations. So thank you very much for that. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, to give them a huge round of applause.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Resilience stage at the India Energy Week 2026. Our session today focuses on new strategic perspectives in the global critical minerals sector, trying to facilitate supply security and build self-reliance. But before we get into the conversation, I just want to get the baselines right. What are critical minerals? Are these minerals which is common across different countries? The answer is a bit more nuanced. Critical minerals are minerals which are important for the economy of a country and for which the country does not have supply security. Now, countries are different, economies are different, and hence, if you look at critical mineral list, it will turn out to be slightly different across different countries. If you look at the G20 countries, most will have a critical mineral list of about 30 in terms of size. But if you combine the G20 countries and look at the lists together, you'll realize the total number of minerals is about 55 itself, which means there's a lot of overlap. And the reason is relevant. The reason for this is most of the critical minerals are focused around technology innovation or energy transition, and that's the reason we're having this conversation here today. If you think of minerals like copper, cobalt, aluminum, they'll find a mention in almost every country's critical mineral list for the right reasons. They do support energy transition. Now, if you look at critical minerals and think of 2030 and 2040 timeframes, the realization is that demand is going to explode. It is going to significantly rise. People say by 2030, it'll be in the range of 2.5, 3x. By 2040, it might turn out to be 5x as compared to what it is today. But the interesting part is critical minerals is actually not a demand story. It is actually a supply story, or rather a supply concentration story. We plotted some top 19 minerals that exist in critical minerals list across different countries. And here is the interesting fact. Out of these 19, China turned out to be the top miner across 7, which is not too bad, or which is not too surprising, I would say. What was surprising is if you found the number of places where China was the top processor. That number is 17 out of 19 minerals. That's the kind of concentration that exists in the world today. Now, there have been many national initiatives aimed at diversification, but they have struggled to move the needle as far as we would have expected. And that raises a very fundamental strategic question. Do we need to rethink how countries collaborate, invest and share risk across the critical minerals value chain? Today's panel brings forward 3 distinct but very complementary perspectives. One from a policymaker standpoint, one from a production standpoint, and the third from a market infrastructure standpoint. And the question that we're going to explore is, how can supply security be strengthened without fragmenting global systems? And what practical pathways exist to balance resilience with competitiveness? Lamin Marong works at the Ministry of Petroleum, Energy and Mines at the Republic of Gambia and brings forward a policymaker's perspective. Tralukia is the Director of Operations at Indian Oil, and he brings a producer's view on exploration, development timelines, and the realities of really scaling domestic supply. And Praveena is the MD and CEO of MCX and brings forward a market and price discovery lens on transparency, volatility, and how risk management in critical minerals can be achieved in the market scenario. With that context, let's move to the conversation. I'll start with Lamin. I spoke about demand. I spoke about the fact that it's a supply-constrained market. From the perspective of resource-holding countries, what is the biggest bottleneck that you see in participating more meaningfully in the global markets? Is it access to capital, technology, or is it access to just stable markets?
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, to be part of this honored guest, and also to be one of the panelists to actually sit before this beautiful audience to actually explain to you the policy directions about critical minerals. I work with the Ministry of Petroleum, Energy and Mines of the Republic of the Gambia, and we have a directorate that is responsible for mining. We call it the Department of Geology, which actually is responsible for the promotion as well as management, as well as administration of geological resources in the country. Your question is quite pertinent, and as you mentioned, regarding the critical mineral sector, we all know that the demand for critical minerals is expected to rise. By 2030, it is being estimated that it is going to double, and by even in a decade in addition to that, that is by 2040, it can even triple. So that shows the demand for these resources. And this is mainly driven by the energy transition. We all know we are moving to EVs, and battery is a key component for the EV market. When it comes to renewables also, this, wind and other renewable energy sources, they need these critical minerals to be able to, to meet our energy transition goals. So that being said, coming back to your question, regarding what is much more important, is it the access to capital or technology, or looking at it, I think what is much more critical is access to capital, because with the capital, you can leverage on the technology, and also probably also increase your shared participation in the critical minerals subsector. But regarding the capital also, it poses another key challenge, because where do you get where will this money come from? That is a very important question to ask, and we should try and know how to mobilize some of these resources. This can be getting from multilateral development partners, through FDIs, that is foreign direct investments, and also maybe through public-private partnerships. So there are many ways, but what is critical, I think, is for especially those countries that are actually the producers of these critical minerals, because most of them don't have the technology to actually add value to those critical minerals. So what is important is actually to put in place to be able to attract those resources, those capital resources, is to actually have the legal, the policy, legal, and the regulatory frameworks. That has to be there, and that has to be gotten right. If it is not gotten right, then it will be difficult for them to attract the much needed capital to be able to exploit or to produce those mineral resources. And also another critical component to that also is value addition, because when you look at it, most resource-rich developing countries, normally what they often do is just to supply the raw materials to the consuming nations. So when you look at that, is at a disadvantage to the producing nations. To the producing nations, because they cannot add value to those minerals, which can create employment as well as create riches for them also to develop and reach to the level of the consuming nations. So I think I would stop here. Maybe some of my other colleagues will also want to add some more insight into what I've just said. Thank you very much.
You make two very interesting points. I mean, you said capital, but you also went to technology.
Yes.
And a lot of countries, for example, Indonesia does focus on the fact that just selling the resource is not good enough for the country. I think it takes you forward in the short term, but for long-term prosperity and being able to create jobs, what they call hilirisasi, which is about downstreaming within the country, becomes extremely important. That is where technology plays a very critical role. So maybe capital first, but at some point in the growth of the nation towards making it really useful from a mineral perspective, technology will potentially also play a part.
Exactly.
Trokya, coming to you. Oil India is not a traditional mining company. You have deep capabilities on three things, I would say. One, of course, subsurface exploration, internationalization, and of course, large-scale project execution. What do you see as your play in critical minerals ecosystem? What is your right to win?
Thank you, Mr. Dishant, and all the panelists, and IEW for inviting me to be here in this particular panel discussion. Yes, if you look at, think about something differently. Don't you think that petroleum for India is not critical?
Absolutely.
It is critical. We produce only 10–11% of the world's of our demand. Means, so what we do, rest around 88 to 90% we are importing. So I think we are from a critical fluid. Now we are into critical minerals. I think it is quite natural since we have the knowledge of the subsurface. We have drilled many wells in different basins in the country. And we have got a good pool of geoscientists who has got the understanding of these basins. And naturally, when we drill, then we definitely encounter some of these minerals we are going to encounter. If we talk about Rajasthan, we have drilled so many wells, and we passed through some of these critical minerals like potash. If say we are talking about potash, so I think that sets the stage for us that we can be a value adder. Maybe we are not traditional miners, but we can add value to the exploration. Maybe at some point of time we will go more downstream. That's a different case, but I think we are quite naturally into the critical minerals as we are in the critical fluids.
Thank you so much, and that clarifies. And let me then ask you, from an operator standpoint, and of course you've been in the Indian ecosystem trying to scale up production, of course being internationally present as well. But when we talk about domestic and diversified supply and trying to build self-resilience, what in your experience slows us down the most? Is it geology? Is it approvals? Is it capital? Is it downstreaming? What slows us down?
Uh, if you look at our country's progress in terms of critical minerals, actually, I think the question is regarding critical minerals. Since I believe that we started a little late. If we talk about the seriousness of the business, in terms of critical minerals, we have started late. So it will take a little bit of time to frame the laws, to frame, like Mr. Morong has mentioned, that we need to have the codes. We need to have the codes in terms of critical minerals. Unless and until we have the policy in place, we have something that's very, very transparent. It may not be very easy for explorers to do the exploration. Now, you see, the government of India is coming up with around 1,200 projects. I think there lies the challenge that who will be doing all these 1,200 projects. In the recent past, you can see that GSI has done. In the last year, I think they have taken up 195 or something, some projects of their size. I think there needs to be more encouragement in terms of critical minerals, and I believe if companies do collaborate, I think collaboration will be very important in this case to progress in terms of critical mineral in India, especially when we have a very limited pool of resources in terms of human resources also. I think that's my point.
If I push you on that, when you think of collaboration on what specific topics are you looking at?
I think collaboration, I think I'll come in 2-3 different ways. One is that you have to have collaboration with the countries which already has the potential, which already experienced this critical mineral, who has already crossed these critical mineral pathways. Many countries are there all over the world. I do not want to name the countries. So we can collaborate with those countries and also build up our own resources in terms of the academia. The academia itself in India can contribute a lot. And the industry as a whole, mining plus companies like us, we can definitely collaborate on the geological knowledge, GSI. All these companies can definitely collaborate. And I think we can build a very good human resources. Now, one point you have also mentioned is that the production part, the refinery part, will be very, very important. I think in this case, we can take the model of Indian oil industries, where we have the capacity to go up to very high level of, means number of times, 256 or 260 million ton we can refine, but we don't have the domestic production to that scale. So the same model can be thought of by our people. They import the critical minerals and do a huge refining capacity and go for business.
Lovely.
Yes.
Pravina, coming to you. And this is an interesting question. India has been talking about self-reliance in a lot of things. Atmanirbharta is something most ministries are going towards. If you had to choose in this decade between the speed of supply, which is in a way security, versus full supply chain sovereignty, which is self-reliance, which should take priority and why? And I'm talking about the next decade.
I think that's a pretty simple one. Of course, these are always trade-offs. It's never one versus the other. Speed is going to be important for here and now, today, agility with which we are able to execute as a country. But in the medium to long term, I think building up that reliance and security with the concept of sovereignty is going to be extremely critical. So we will need to act on both fronts, which I think we are.
Got it. Lamin, coming to you. Self-reliance is something that a lot of other countries are pursuing as well, not just India. And in that situation where there's a lot of focus on self-reliance by consuming nature, what do you consider it as for resource-rich nations? Is it an opportunity or does it risk further fragmenting the global system that exists today?
Okay. I think it's both. It presents both opportunities as well as risks, especially for the resource-rich developing countries. It's an opportunity because, as I mentioned, the demand for these critical minerals is expected to rise significantly in the world, and thus it will require some mining contracts that would be signed, or that developing countries and consuming countries would be engaged in. So what is critical here is the opportunity here is that the producers, the producing countries, the developing economies, I think it will be important that they negotiate good deals with these companies. And also they can try also to actually increase investment into local processing of these critical minerals, because that is also very, very key. And also that will also try to help them to even diversify better, to be able to have more players. But on the other hand, also it poses also a risk, because like the current trend is like mostly what obtains in the critical mineral subsector is like the consuming countries will just come and just take the raw materials without any form of processing, and then take it and then process it in their various countries, where they create the employment that is actually depriving the developing nations from the employment and other opportunities that they can benefit from. So it will be important for mineral-rich countries, especially those from Africa, to try and leverage on that aspect, not just to be raw material suppliers, but also to play a critical role when it comes to value addition in critical minerals. Thank you very much.
That's a very important point. If you look at some, and specifically you made the point of African countries, the West African countries like Guinea are making that effort of saying, for example, don't take bauxite. At least process it, if not put a smelter here, but do process it into alumina before you take it out of the country, and that's the intent of downstreaming as well.
Exactly.
So Nishant, I think just in the interest of time, I thought I'll cover up a little bit about what's there on the market side and what's the role that markets plays with critical minerals, as well as the whole energy piece that we're talking about. Because in the context of the shift that we are seeing from a country where we've typically focused on global supply and domestic consumption. We've, of course, in the last many years moved towards developing more sufficiency, certainly on the energy side, where from refining to a lot of downstream really now happening in country. We're seeing that happen in minerals as well. Critical minerals, I think, is right now early phases of where that stands. And as this physical market is really playing out in these dynamics, the role of the financial markets as an overlay here starts becoming very important. Because wherever there is a pure import dependence, then really we are working off global prices. And that's where a derivative market comes in to manage that volatility in global prices. But as we have more of the demand supply getting generated in country, to the point that both my colleagues here have made, the need to both set domestic prices as well as work off hedging there becomes very important. For example, at MCX, we do have global price point-based derivative contracts, which are futures for oil and gas. But on electricity, which is locally produced and consumed, we run a domestic contract. And I would say similar in the case of metals and looking at critical minerals, there is nickel, which is a domestically delivered contract again, though highly linked to the global supply chain. And when we look at this, and what does hedging do? It helps to manage that volatility. And in today's world, if one thing is certain, is that prices are going to be volatile. So everything that our physical partners are putting together is based on ultimately how the revenue stream will play out, what's the cost, how do you manage the sort of uncertainty there. And that's really where markets play an important role, where also the concept of reliance starts becoming very critical.
Thank you. I think that's a very, very important point that you make, that as countries end up having a domestic market, how do you make that market work? And how do you set the pricing within that becomes extremely critical. Again, given the paucity of time, I do want to just ask one last question, and this is to all three of you. Love to have 30-second responses. If you look at 2035, and we're talking about building supply security for ourselves in critical minerals, what is that one structural change that would really make a difference? Is it policy? Is it investment models? Is it market mechanisms? Is it offtake contracts? What do you think will really make a difference? And maybe, Lamin, we start with you.
Okay, thank you again. I think the one main critical thing for the African continent is basically on the policy side. I think with robust policies and with incentives that are out there, I think we will be able to attract the much needed investments and the much needed capacity to be able to develop our critical mineral subsector. Thank you very much.
Trolokyo?
I think both policy and market mechanism needs to be developed because I think both are quite interrelated. If we don't have a good policy backup, then how do you do the market? So I think if we don't have a good market mechanism, then how do I do the policy? I think these two together, I'll go with what is done.
Praveena?
Yeah, I think while we continue to support from markets the physical ecosystem, and hearing my colleagues here, we need to continue to offer that global price discovery-based support mechanisms in markets, but also start becoming domestic price discovery price setter when it comes to our domestic markets.
Thank you all. Just a couple of closing thoughts. I think the fact that critical minerals are an important input into energy transition, which is what this conference is about today. While they are, but they're also a determinant of strategic autonomy, industrial competitiveness, and geopolitical alignment today. That's the importance they have beyond the fact that they support energy transition. And in that context, the question that we are asking is self-reliance, resilience. These are the two topics that we are trying to do. So to make the point that self-reliance does not mean isolation in today's world, and neither does resilience mean inefficiency when you're trying to build resilience within the country. The challenge actually is designing systems that are diversified but not away from global, competitive but still secure. I'd like to thank our panelists for the thoughts that they've shared today, and it's a topic that's been in discussions and will continue to be in discussions given what we're going to see in the world in the next 10 to 15 years. Thank you so much again for your candid thoughts. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good morning, and thank you for joining us in this special and exciting session focused on cyber resilience and risk. What we'll do is we'll directly jump in. My name is Abhik Chatterjee. I'm an MDN partner, and I lead our technology and digital practice across Asia Pacific. I've got esteemed guests along with me here, and we will introduce themselves along the way. But if it is okay, I'll directly fire in. We've been told we are specific on time. As we know, cybersecurity and resilience has been a very important topic. Through 2024, 2025, we have seen about 67, 68% of the large oil and gas companies falling prey to many of the malicious attempts. Point number two is with the advent of AI and now agents, the way we are working and our future of work is also inducing a lot of porous holes on how we are using tools like ChatGPT, many other things, and how it makes us susceptible. And last but not the least, the India Energy Week couldn't have happened at a better time, just following the Davos meet, wherein geopolitics and AI took center stage. So with that, let me launch into questions with my fellow colleagues here. Let me start with Amal. Amal, in your role at ONGC, specifically being the CISO, Would love to hear about how, being the security head and chief of one of the largest organizations in India, how are you looking at risk? What are some of the most, if I would say, interesting and cutting edge things that ONGC is doing? And this was not there in the question before. Uh, what, what are two things that really keeps you awake?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be part of India Energy Week, a forum that represents not just the future of energy, but the future of India's economic resilience and national growth. So coming to the questions, see, there are some certain things that we have been doing, particularly in the OT area now. See, typically when we started OT and IT, they started with the same platform, using the same Windows servers and things like that. But OT stayed in a kind of air-gapped environment, and because of that, even though systems became obsolete, people continued using them. So that became a pain point later on when the need for IT-OT convergence came in. Because for analytics, that OT data needed to go to IT area, and there the problem started coming. So we have addressed that problem in a way by using, of course, technologies, but having a very straightforward rule that in no case controls should be transferred to IT area. As far as data is concerned, data can go, data can be monitored outside, but in no case from IT, the control should be possible. Secondly, when we started cybersecurity, the concept was keep yourself secure, protect yourself. But over the years, everyone has realized that there is nothing called foolproof security. So from that perspective, the concept of cyber resilience came in. Now, this year, the thing that we are working on is not cyber resilience, because eventually, even in cyber resilience, there is a continuity break. Even for some time, the business stops. So we are now working on the concept of cyber continuity, in the sense that even if there is a breach happening or even if something happens, the business can continue. How energy flows, we are working on that aspect. And in that OT area, we have identified technologies and solutions and processes that can provide us this kind of expertise and this kind of posture. So that is one thing that is working for us. Secondly, the use of AI. Of course, the use of AI in OT can produce very good results, and if in our case, when we are using AI in the top business areas, that has given us very nice results, but from cybersecurity angle, it has created fresh problems. So now we are working on concept of secure by design, where there are greenfield areas. At the time of conceptualization itself, we are going for a kind of a secure by design concept. So there later on, add-on concept doesn't come in. These two things are our priorities in this year.
Let me now shift to Anil, Suhas, and Joseph. The three of you represent organizations which are leading in different forms of technology. I have two, if I would say the question is in two parts. Number one is, as you are in the market trying to outsmart the different malicious minds and varied type of risks, what are some of the top innovations that you are focusing on? And secondly, in your capacity as partners, okay, how is your interaction model to not only, let's say, sell your services, which is part and parcel of every revenue stream and P&L that we hold, but what's the kind of role that you play in, for example, coaching clients, boardrooms, because there is an appreciation of the topic that's become ever more critical and important today, right? So maybe we'll get you to start, sir.
Thank you very much, and very good question. First of all, introduce myself. I am Anil Bhatia, and I am responsible for Emerson business in India. Of course, Emerson is the leading automation provider, and we work with all the energy sectors here. So, to give a little bit of context to your question, if you see today, we have, if I take, let me take one industry in energy like the upstream. there is enormous data available. We are getting data available. Like if I see the best place today when it comes to the type of amount of data we have. But then obviously once you have the data, the the decision that we take in our energy sector is very risky. It has got a lot of safety issues and also capital intensive. We have to be very, very kind of cautious. And what we are promoting there is a zero trust maturity model. To Mr. Sir's, regarding the legacy OT system. See, what we mean by zero trust maturity model, that any item in the whole ecosystem which has a vulnerability we monitor. So we don't trust anything. And if you see the way the threats are coming in, not only from the normal perimeter, but coming from the old legacy system. So that is one most important thing is on the zero trust maturity module, and which we strongly promote to all our partners and customers, that you have to ensure that have that maturity module and don't leave anything in the whole ecosystem. The second is, as you know, the AI. I mean, we use the term AI as industrial AI. Because we cannot use AI as a black box in an industrial environment where you have so much data upstream. What we do is we propose like a hybrid. So an AI on the go will propose what can be the process, what can be the model, and then it needs to be kind of confirmed and agreed by the specialist before you start deploying that to the recommendation. And the third one quickly also on the LLM. LLM uses the inherent specialization which we have. That is what LLM uses, so that you have the expertise, and that we use so that when even the new, for example, a new geophysicist come, he or she will have a lot of intelligence already available by deploying the LLM. So these are three things which we are trying to propose to our customer as we kind of deploy the AI and the digitization modules in the energy systems.
Got it. So Exactly, I want to introduce myself. I'm actually Suhas Gopinath, CEO of Globals, and I started my company when I was 14 and started off as a programmer, and of course eventually into cyber offensive and also defensive. So our only sales pitch is because we know how to break locks, we can make better locks. And of course with that background, I could tell, I think the attack surfaces have, of course over the years have evolved. And with OT systems, I've seen that at least the APT groups or the state-sponsored actors are no more targeting for espionage purpose, but it's a DOS attack. Like it's actually to disrupt operations. And I think with the advent of AI, the worst thing that we've seen in our experiences is that attacks don't look like attacks anymore. It looks like, it camouflages as business operations, as if it's one of the normal operations. And it's no more about false positive issues, but it's a false negatives. So, and when it's a false negative for a CISO, businesses can, it can actually collapse. And I think I would only want to share one particular experience with one of the, I would say, multinational company which is into energy sector, where the CISO was very confident that their systems were very secured. And I asked my sales team that we're not going to do any presentation to the CISO's office, but we'll only show them, we would like to show them one single screenshot of a red teaming exercise that we did on their organization. And I think in about 15 minutes with some of the AI tools, we were in the fuel management system of this particular system. And yeah, that was our sales pitch. So as a company, we didn't have to do any kind of presentation. So it's not to brag about our offerings, but it's also to highlight the vulnerabilities and the attack surfaces, the way they've evolved over the years, and especially with AI. I must tell you that as actually somebody who comes from an offensive background, it's absolutely dangerous, I would say. And I think I wouldn't expect organizations to adopt AI without understanding those risks. And it's extremely important that, and if I have to advise CISOs or the OT CISOs, instead of adopting AIs across a cloud, it's very important that they could explore at least those edge AIs. Yeah.
Thanks. Joseph, over to you, and thanks for coming all the way from Houston here to join us on this panel.
Thank you, Abhi. My name is Joseph Alancheri. I head Infosys Energy Practice. Today we are a top 2 technology services provider to the energy industry globally. And one tectonic trend we are seeing is the big increased focus on OT security. Your pipelines, your upstream assets, your refineries, that's where the action is. And with this advent of AI and agentic AI in particular, there is a focus towards unleashing this power of the agentic AI systems on OT. For instance, we have built a what we call as a drilling AI agent, which really helps drill better, looking at all the drill reports, morning reports, and all the historic data, and coming up with suggestions on a new field. And this has been launched in the Middle East recently. But all of these are acting on the OT systems. And our advice to the CXOs of the world is pretty clear. Along with the enormous power of agentic AI is the need for enormous control. And that's where we advocate a very proper control framework. At Infosys, we have an agentic AI control platform, which we also use for our cyber defense. So it's called our Cyber Next platform that really looks at how to manage and control these agentic AI systems so that they're in line with what you want them to do. At the same time, with the advent of AI, you have increased the surface area of possible attacks. Today, what used to be done by state-sponsored actors can really be done by individuals with the power of AI. For instance, you can actually simulate millions of attacks, searching for millions of vulnerabilities, which with the kind of power we have. It's kind of democratized, cyber defense or cyber attacks, and we are all facing that situation. So we advocate looking at addressing this new challenge with the new tools available. And there are ways and means in which you can use the same techniques to address this large exposure that today you have. So those are some of the big trends. Obviously, AI right front and center, and the need for control, Abhi.
No, I think great points, all three of you. Just taking a step from where all of you shared. Obviously, the aspiration and the ambition is massive, correct? And the flip side risks were clearly shared. But if we look at energy as a domain, as an industry, we have really not been at the cutting edge of both in terms of investing, adopting, and then closing the loop with technology. Obviously, there's been sparks here and there in terms of getting your twins or advanced robotics, etc. But if we look at even the largest organizations, many in India, globally as well, there are severe, if I would say, steps that need to be taken on from foundational tech. I mean, OT and IT is itself a big area, and the OT side is specifically, leave alone AI. As we look at this evolution, correct? In your opinion, and this question I would like to pose to all of you, and maybe we can start with Joseph, you traveling back this side, is what are, let's say, the top 1 or 2 things that we need as an industry, as an energy, with be it oil and gas, utilities, whichever, renewables, big bursts there. What should we do different? And to me, part of that question is more brownfield relevant, sure, because assets which are more greenfield are naturally, if I would say, digitally native and hence come with a lot of the future technologies. But about 65-70% of our operating base still continues to be brownfield in nature. So what would be your top 1 or 2, let's say, points of advice or suggestion to the large oil companies to do things a bit differently?
Yeah, Abhi, it's a billion-dollar question, and I would start by saying that acute focus on the edge is the need of the hour. On the edge is where life is, and on the edge energy today is going to make or break nations. So techniques like isolating, techniques where you can have an identity management approach that is not focused on humans, but actually focused on your devices on the edge. For instance, non-human identity management, as we call it. just-in-time identity management, where you have, or just-in-time access, where you give your PLC controllers access just-in-time. So techniques like that, where you have an acute focus on the edge and you develop methods to manage the edge, is what is the need of the hour. And as our friend Amal said, resilience is the other keyword. Despite the attacks, despite the shutdowns that are required to manage the cyber threats, how do you continue to operate? How do you continue to operate your pipelines, your upstream assets? So if you can build resilience into your systems, I mean, I think these are some of the things that I would take off the top of my hat, number one and number two. Thank you.
Amal?
Yeah, I totally agree with what he said. The basic thing is, if you should get the foundations right before you scale intelligence. And AI, which is built on a, say, flat network or weak identities and all, is bound to fail at some time or the other. Thirdly, when you're building AI, as I mentioned, the controls, if you're giving it to it, you should be very sure of it. Dr. Kalam has once said, technology is a very good servant, but a very bad master. So if you're making it the master, be sure that ultimately you are the super master. In our context, we have ensured that AI gives the advisory, but the final call, the accountability remains with the human. He takes the final call and he implements or he rejects whatever is suggested by the AI. Now, lastly, earlier we had concepts of VAPT, that was point in a time exercise. But now the concept is of continuous evaluation or continuous threat monitoring. So concepts like CTEM and all need to be implemented to get the better aspects of AI used in the environment.
Suhas?
Of course, my only take or submission is maybe to add on cyber resilience. It's also very important to ensure that I would say cyber resilience has to be treated on the same quadrant as much importance that we give for safety drill. And I've actually seen that I think the biggest threat for CISOs right now is on supply chain security. And it's for some reason that we assume that when we are procuring it from certain PSUs or if the vendor happens to be a multinational, it is assumed that we need to trust them. But it's not the case. We've seen it in the Indian Armed Forces. We've seen it across energy sectors and also critical industries that, of course, supply chain security, of course, can fail. And as Amal sir mentioned, that it's very important that apart from VAPT, we need to have the continuous red teaming of the OT systems.
Sure.
No, so I think all the gentlemen said very valid points. I just want to add few things, to Amal sir, that in AI terms, what Emerson is doing, for example, in our control system, we have inbuilt now a virtual advisor. And every action that virtual advisor is proposing is an advice. We are not putting AI as a black box and it takes action. The action is finally confirmed and reviewed and then taken. But it really helps a lot in speeding up. To your primary question, AI has not come fully. Yes, but that is the way to kind of get there. And secondly, a very important thing, I think, is the ability to discover all the areas in that current OT/IT, the way it has evolved. There will be so many legacy systems in the system. So, like within our Delta V system, for example, we have a discovery model which will be able to discover all the source of threats which can occur in that system, and nothing is left, as I said, a zero trust. So I think these are the two important aspects I would like to add to what the gentleman said.
Thanks. I think very, very valuable thoughts. I think one word I thought we could have added is getting organizations to invest and give primary importance to it. Because often cybersecurity is like the 5th item in your checklist, and it becomes number 1 only when you get hacked and when you are held on ransom. And I think that mind shift has to happen sooner than later. I know we are racing against time. I have bundled one final question to all of you, and let's take about 30-40 seconds to answer that, is we are in a very strange world wherein the best humans in the technology space are limited, the agents are yet not reliable, but we are trying to create a future which is perfect, right? In each of your areas, how are you managing that conundrum? And any wrapping thoughts So more from a people, talent, as well as, and we've been largely, if I would say, partly reactive and then trying to be proactive in this entire risk resilience domain. But any thoughts on how you are approaching this gap, and any very interesting hacks or steps that each of you are taking? Like to time it to about 30-40 seconds. A quick rapid fire on this. Sorry for that.
Oh, thank you, Abhi. Rapidly saying, I think reimagine, rethink skills is what we have been telling our employees, and hence we are trying to train them at scale for bracing to the new AI world. So a lot of digital training and focused on reimagining how you worked before, and I think that's the core of what we are trying to do as a company. Learn at scale, unlearn at scale, relearn at big scale. Amen.
Yeah, I would like to first start with agreeing with you fully that make cybersecurity and AI a leadership and investment decision. It should be discussed in the same rooms where we discuss safety, where we discuss investments, where we discuss reliability. That is at the boardroom level. Unless the boardroom gives priority to AI and cybersecurity, it will remain a small area and it will remain a pain area. Secondly, design cyber controls into assets from day one, means go for secure by design architectures, and at that time also assure yourself that the supply chain vulnerabilities and other things are getting plugged. So that later on, when we are like even in OT area, if you are implementing IEC 62443 and things like that, if inherently the products being used don't comply fully, then still that vulnerability will exist. Lastly, treat cybersecurity and safety equally. Engineered into systems, tested under failure, and this should not be a one-time exercise, this should be a rolling exercise, carried out periodically, maybe by third party, maybe internally, but there has to be a management insight into it. So we should move from cyber resilience to cyber continuity, wherein we should have secure by design, resilient by default, and continuous by intent.
My take is, I think, as organizations, especially in the energy sector, they need to invest into cyber ranges so that it's one way to upskill the professionals who are in cybersecurity. And I've started to see, and of course also inspired by my last meeting within the World Economic Forum, is that we've started to see these new positions who's controlling the models that are being deployed within the organizations for LLMs and SLMs. You got model security officer, you got AI security officer. So I think if organizations could invest into cyber ranges to upskill and also to reskill the professionals, it's very important. And it's a very important point that you brought out, Abhik, is I think CISOs has to be, I think they need to have a seat on the board, and it's extremely important because it's not to fulfill any kind of compliance with certain or any of the regulatory body, but I think for the organization's well-being, it's extremely critical that they report to the board directly.
Anil?
I'll make it very quick. Everybody said rightly, and investment is the key, as you rightly said. But most importantly, what we are saying, I'll be very practical here. It will remain a hybrid world, and it will not be that humans will be replaced by AI. So AI has to be deployed at this stage to make sure that the humans are more equipped and more powerful to do things in a better way, and of course in a cyber secure way. So thank you.
Super. First of all, I know we have almost run out of time, but massive thanks to each one of you for not only sharing the insights, but also being on the stage. And thank you to India Energy Week for having us and the privilege on this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to moderate this session on harnessing data and AI-driven workflows, specifically for India and Indian exploration. I'm Atisha Mahajan. I'm Head of Exploration Research from Restart Energy, and I'm joined here with very expert panel, varying from the operator and the service sector and the strategy to, comment on this very important and key topic, still nascent but developing quite quickly across the industry. Just to put the topic into perspective, I just want to talk a bit about what is happening in exploration. And you see, in the global exploration, we see that discovered volumes are declining, success rates are, dropping, and this is a kind of, I would say, exploration paradox, where exploration is needed because the reserve ratios of the companies are declining. It's also the need of the long-term energy security for the countries and globally as well. And this similar paradox is very relevant to India as well, where in India, we have huge acreage available, frontier exploration, lot of scope of, a lot of prospectivity probably still lying under the subsurface. And here we think we need to brainstorm a bit on how the data, is the data that we have, is it sufficient enough? So sufficiency to efficiency, we need to talk about that. And we also need to see how the most recent evolutions in AI, how they can be implemented into the Indian sphere and make exploration more successful. Yeah. And to start that, I think it's quite natural for me to start with Mr. Rajshri Gupta. He's MD and CEO of ONGC Videsh Limited. And as in from an operator's perspective, I would like to understand, how AI and data is being, utilized. Do you see any data gaps in overall Indian offshore, and how that can be made more sufficient, and how AI can be implemented, or is it already being implemented in the country, and how it is being utilized?
Thank you. Very good afternoon to my esteemed panelists and the audience here. It's a great pleasure to be back at IEW. I believe that the theme of this panel is extremely timely because India today is going through a fundamental shift in how exploration data is created, shared, and used. We in the ONGC group, as part of ONGC Videsh, which is working in now 15 countries with 32 assets and 3 business centers across the globe, and ONGC domestically, we do believe that now is the time where exploration has to be looked at in a different way. With nearly 1 million square kilometers open in the EEZ of India, there's massive new seismic acquisition happening. The National Data Repository has already taken place and it's open to the public who wants to have a look. We are moving to a cloud-enabled open platform, and thereby we are changing the way exploration will be defined in the future. But this also creates responsibility for E&P companies like ONGC Videsh and ONGC, because I personally do believe that though AI is the buzzword, but AI will not work only on raw data. AI will work on organized, governed, and trusted data. And that is where E&P companies like us will have to walk the talk. We must first transform how we manage our data, how we manage our subsurface seismic records, and engineering workflows. Today, the world is standing at an inflection point in the history of hydrocarbon exploration where 2 transformative forces are taking place simultaneously. One is rapid evolution of AI, ML, and big data, and at the same time shift towards more sustainable, secure, and affordable energy source. What the country has done is they have now opened up the no-go areas. We have the seismic in place, we have the NDR in place. Now it's for ONGC to do. ONGC has already started with a project called Project DOT, which is Digital Organizational Transformation. 500 executives are on board. We are in the process of building the enterprise data platform for this and will align with the Open Subsurface Data Universe, or OSDU as we call it. The principles of subsurface and reservoir management platform will then convert data into a standardized workflows. We don't want to have silos of data and workflows or software happening in the organization. We want it to be one source integrated across platforms. We have also understood that unless geologists, geophysicists, reservoir engineers, well engineers, planners, they don't work on the same governed data backbone, AI will only remain a pilot. And it will not then be a real decision support system. We also are very cognizant of the fact that seismic processing time, the acquisition is the main cost factor, and then comes the processing time. Whereas acquisition is 80 to 90% of the cost, the processing is hardly 5 to 7% of the cost, but takes much more time. This is where we believe that it can be compressed, because in today's world, smaller business cycles are the norm. And the final part is how we interpret it, how we develop prospects, how we release locations, so that there is more precision, the linkages with the wells already drilled. We have data which I can share with the audience here, that ONGC has drilled more than 150 wells in deepwater offshore in India, eastern, western, all together. But as we do much more for Sagar Manthan, we need all of this to come together. Each of these wells will cost about 100 million or more. So it is, though it's not a perfect science, but we want that as we integrate the workflows and bring it into AI, our decision making is much better, and our risk is to a lesser extent as we go forward with this big job. We have been using AI for long, as I said, for log analysis, well performance, and some other simulation support. But now what we are doing is we are bringing the younger generation with us, the up to E2, E3, E4 level, who are much more adept with this technology. We are training them. We are bringing them into the management platforms. We are bringing them to digital platforms. We are also realizing that the use cases that we have been using throughout the organization, some of these are fragmented. And this now needs to all talk the same language. This is where we stand today. In the international arena also, as we work with the international partners, it is very clear that this is the time for collaboration and cooperation. This is the time for risk mitigation. This is the time for using your past knowledge to work a better future. It is not I versus you. It is always we together. In this world of uncertainty, in this world of disruption, in this world of volatility, the more we network, the more we integrate, the more we dissolve the silos, the better we are.
That's interesting, and I think Rachi just took us through the whole life cycle of AI, how it's needed and how it will be incorporated into the existing workflows of E&P companies. I think my next question is to you, Lalit. Lalit is MD, India region for SLB. Do you also, it's on the similar grounds as I asked to Rajeshri. So we know India is doing, new stratigraphic wells. They are, doing new seismic. There's an NDR 2.0 already in place. But to me, it feels that it's still in a very nascent phase, and it needs to mature a bit more. So from your perspective, what more, data investments are needed to make a sustained investment into accelerate exploration success in India?
Thank you, Atesh. Good afternoon, co-panelists, Good afternoon, audience. I'm very excited to be here at IEW as always. So it's a very interesting topic, and I think this panel should have been the day one, slot one panel, right? I mean, nothing is more important than this topic, so very glad to be here. So I think Rajshri sir laid out the entire, uh, ground network on where we are. The government has taken some bold and decisive steps on opening the no-go zones, right? That's the first thing. So the total area available for exploration now is about 1.3 million square kilometers. 1 million is new, where the data could be sparse. But there is 0.386 million square kilometers where we have a reasonable data. But the confidence level in the data is low. So, and everybody is now working in a bit of silo, every operator, the investors from abroad, they're looking at silo. I am a strong believer that multi-client is the way to go across the basins to offset the costs, increase the scale, that will bring in the operating efficiency as well as reduce the costs and bring the success. And this was recently done in Algeria, Egypt some time back, Mexico long time back, and that was their success. They were also national companies, but then used multi-client to there. The confidence on AI, right, I think is building. It's a journey. Nothing gets developed overnight. Nothing will be a step. Any technology, even the wireline technology, took about 10 to 20 years before the confidence came. And my request to all the operators and the policymakers here is that we have to start the journey. As we go along the journey, there will be improvements, the confidence will increase, and we have done such a successful study in Kawanza Basin in West Africa, where we had the calibration against the manual processing as well. We cut the time by 8 times, and the results are matching around 90%, right? I mean, so there are ways to be done, and I think we have to start rewriting our playbook on how we approach. If we continue to refine the playbook that we had 20 years back, it's not going to work. As our Prime Minister says, right, in the Atmanirbhar, that India will not do incremental steps, but will make a step change, and that's what the ask for the industry is here. That's what I strongly believe in. Thanks.
That's a very good point, indeed. My next question is to Eric. On the similar grounds, so, upstream operators, they are not just having data on seismic. Of course, that's huge, but they have a lot of other data, geological data, production data. So there's a lot of backing that they can get from all the data that is existing. But still, the frontier exploration or exploration in general, even in the mature basins, is very high risk. So from your perspective, how can data and AI help move from, fragmented subsurface information to faster and more confident exploration and even appraisal decisions?
Sure. Yeah, it's great to be here. First time to be able to come to IEW and see it and kind of interact in the conversation. I think, as everybody said, the AI topic, right, for the majority of conferences around the world, right, is always front and center. And I think what's interesting is there's a lot of similarities. We joked about it before we came up on stage here in terms of the sheer amount of data and information. So there's no shortage. And so really what the opportunity is in terms of being able to reduce time and speed things up by augmenting that together and using AI as a means in which to, and really platforms like, the AspenTech subsurface intelligence piece, to be able to tie those things and be able to orchestrate that into new workflows, to be able to build consistency and repeatability and patterns, and obviously start the journey and learn from it, and be able to find the new outcomes that enable that to go quicker. The other piece, which I think we've seen in other industries, other parts of oil and gas, other parts like power generation, is also the use of virtual advisors. You think about, we mentioned workforce and new people coming in, existing generations that have been here for many, many years, decades, is really that ability to take the knowledge that exists either from operators, folks like ourselves that are vendors providing technology to industry, but how do you help to build recommendations as you process through that information, through that data, and be able to, get to the outcome more quickly. So if the idea of taking, the seismic data, the production data, velocity data, things, and orchestrating that, one of the biggest things is being able to help somebody understand maybe what's been done before in the past and be able to query that in natural language, no matter where you are in the world, and be able to find, the things that you're looking for and be able to work through that process more quickly.
Yeah, I guess the integration of the data is the key, and making sense out of that data is definitely a next step for sure. My next question is to our last panelist over there. So, Mr. Sujoy Chaudhary is Chief Strategy Officer at TCG Group. So, the question is to you about, so when I looked up TCG, I realized it works across the digital value chain, and as you are strategy officer, so I want to ask you from investment perspective. So there's a lot of data, big data, how that can be utilized to make frontier basin more bankable, and have you done some work along that lines to, showcase some success stories?
Thanks, Atisha. It's always a pleasure coming to IEW, and it showcases what India has to offer, the hospitality of India per se, and this networking with fantastic industry partners. I think what all my co-panelists have said is very, very important. We don't have too much data compared to the global giants because of the varied geographies that we have, but nevertheless, we have fair amount of data to start a point. I think the National Data Repository is something which we have given it a structure. We have forced all the operators to report in a particular format. Yes, there could be missing links today, which actually possibly leaves out a bit of context. But having that data is a good starting point with a cloud-native architecture. All it makes the data used for AI, ML to a large extent more relevant. Now, coming to the data sufficiency or the data, what I should say, paralysis or whatever we may say, that's a secondary point. I think we are too early to say that the data which we have is too much to handle. I think these days models can consume any amount of data. Now, before any data is put into the system, you need to understand that we need to remove the outliers, which we call cleansing of a data. We need to contextualize the data and then transform that data into something meaningful. Now, when you start, you can have a two-pronged approach. You can first do a only data-based model, or you can do a hybrid model where you have some relevant mathematical models governing results which are coming. We as a company, TCG, believes in the hybrid model more, and we have been doing this hybrid model approach in oil and gas space since we were discussing just before this session, that this happens to be a very critical sector. Certain things go wrong, it could lead to a catastrophe. So we can't just rely sheerly on the data. One, human in the loop is important still now. Autonomous AI, agent-driven systems would take some time, though they are being talked of quite a bit. But understanding the underlying mathematical model and then working with the data to put guardrails is very, very important. That is precisely what I feel we should start with. And all my co-panelists are experts in their own field. I come from a company who's into the data, I would say AI modeling, and we have a model called MQ. And we have used this model starting from football. We are partners to the world's largest football federation. So we are on the other side, we are partners to the largest pharmaceutical company. And in between, we have all the oil and gas lines. So you can understand that the platform is very versatile. It is an absolute synchronized. It's a model where the data ingestion can be in any form. It is a 360-degree approach to data. It can be video, audio, scribbles. It can be any damn thing. And it's cloud independent. So this seamless integration of data, version upgrades, everything has been built into the platform, which is also, I feel, very important. You can stitch together Because LLMs are available everywhere. You can stitch together and create a model. But when you go to implement in real sense, it does not happen like that. Because there are multifaceted interfaces where this will lead to some kind of a, I should say, a data overrun. It could lead to some false results coming into the play. So having a structured approach to the data with proper knowledge of the geophysics or the chemistry of the thing or a process which you are running is very, very important. So I feel this hybrid approach would make more sense, not only in the refining sector where we are already doing it, but also in E&P sector, because you have a good panel of experts guiding these models to the required direction. Having come to the examples which we have done, I think, yes, we have done work with one of the largest companies in E&P sector. This is a problem which we have solved, on which multiple papers were written earlier on the recipe of cementation of wells. There was 500 odd parameters which govern cementation. Could be from the gas permeability to the strength of the concrete to hold to the high temperature, high pressures, to the fluid losses, and multifarious aspects of cementation recipe. Normal process used to be that you intuitively create a recipe based on the information you have or you had, and then try it out for a few days or a few weeks, and then come and implement that. And if it does not perform, you go back to the lab, reform it, and go back. So we have completely solved this. We have handled all these parameters based on the data sets that we have, the data sets the company provided, and the continuous flow of information from the labs, which was analyzing this geological data which was flowing in from the drilling operation that was having. And the recipe was being altered, fine-tuned, and implemented. So they have got very, very good results, and we are going forward to implement more such use cases in that particular company. So that is how we can actually use AI to accelerate, which Rajesh was talking right at the beginning, to accelerate quite a few things. Let's say fracturing. When we are going for fracturing, how the behavior pattern is changing on a fracture, if certain path deviations are happening, how to correct, all those can now be handled online. Similar instances are there in refinery, very complex refinery processes. You can now track catalyst sensitivity, catalyst activation, everything. We are doing multiple works in these kind of fields. We are doing with Aramco for catalysis, which can be to an extent, I should say, correlated with geology. So all these works are going on, and I'm sure in the days to come, you will see a very refined versions of, because I keep on saying E&P is possibly a space where you have data in more structured form than any other areas. So I'm sure the models would become very powerful. Models would help to increase the success rates and also to avoid issues which come up normally in E&P situation, unwanted surprises, I would say.
Yep, thank you so much. I think we've discussed data quite a lot, and we cannot really separate AI from data when we are discussing the data. But I think we need to focus a bit on this AI pillar separately as well, especially from exploration's perspective, that how it will impact the decision making. And this is my open question to all of you. Where does AI genuinely add value today in exploration decision making? And where do expectations still exceed reality? So maybe we can start with you, sir.
Let us be frank here. Just to add to what Sujayji was saying, today about 30% of the organizations are already using AI for dynamic mud weight adjustment when we drill a well to prevent blowouts. It's now AI is there in pipeline monitoring, its health, all that is being done as we speak. Now coming to exploration, though I'm not a subsurface person, let me be clear about it. But what we are seeing is the human ingenuity of the mind, human mind, that has to be respected. But at the same time, if we have drilled, let's say, 10,000 wells in India, do we have all the data with us? Am I able, in ONGC Videsh, to integrate what I'm learning in Colombia with Brazil, Brazil with Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan with Vietnam, Vietnam with Sudan, South Sudan? So if we can get these learnings on board in a common platform. And in the decision making, when the people sit there, the MDT team sits there, they can challenge each other across the board, number one. Number two, as we give and respect human decision making, I personally believe that AI means less hierarchical structures. Even the junior most person should have a say in the room based on what data he is available to them. So if there is a single source of truth, if there is integration, if there is less hierarchy, and it is openly discussed, the divergence between decision making of with AI and without AI will reduce, number one. Number two, it will cut through the lessons learned across basins, across geographies, across continents. This is the biggest thing that ONGC Videsh brings to the table. Is it is the only E&P company, we are the second largest E&P company only after our parent in terms of production and reserves. It brings to the fore for India a knowledge base which is across 19 countries, 32 projects, and it is working with the international firms where different forms of these AI models are being used. So we do believe that if we play it right in India, the government has done a lot to now with the ORDA Act, with the NDR, with the seismic, with the cloud enablement. It was earlier done from our Houston office. We have an Center of Excellence in Houston also, where we are integrating now. So I think that the expectations and does it add to the revenue? This is a question that CEO levels ask. It has actually shown that if we are committed and do it very honestly, it will definitely increase their revenue in 60 to 70% cases. It has been proven already. So we have to go through this with commitment, with honesty, and with single source of truth.
I'll have a follow-up question, sorry.
Yeah, please.
So, of course, we want to have a single source of truth. We want to have understanding from every, through the whole hierarchy. But as an operator, if you have to, say, for example, trust an interpretation from AI, would you believe that and make a decision on wildcat and appraisal spend in today's time? Or you will have, or even take a second opinion from, a geologist or geophysicist who's working on that data still before making a final decision?
If we have gone through 70 years of our history, depending on human experience, knowledge that they bring to the table, if my AI model is strong enough and it has all that 70 years, what is AI? It's the things that we have learned, what we are feeding. If you are very truthful in that, then why not rely on the AI? Yes, with some overview or some questioning from the human team also, but this is the time to give AI the chance. Because AI is what we have done for 70 years, what the international firms have done for 70 years. If it is telling us something, that this is what you did in Ankleshwar, this you can do it in, let's say, Brazil, why not? So I would put my bet on AI if it is the right model that we have built.
That's a very strong statement and definitely supportive of AI. I'll come back to you, Eric, with the same question. I'll just repeat it. Where does AI genuinely add value today in exploration decision making, and where do expectations still exceed reality? Just share your viewpoint.
I guess I'll build on it and say today it is the hybrid piece, right? So it is the fact that you get the physical models and you've got this massive amount of historical data and information that operators have done, and the ability to take and apply general technology of artificial intelligence, and whether it's LLMs or MLs or other things, and be able to industrialize it and apply it to this world. So what you see and where we see success is the ability to augment the human and make them more productive, whether they're junior or senior, and be able to, and what has been true probably for the last decade or so, to start to democratize that information and allow people to move much more quickly. In terms of where does it not, maybe the aspirations are still too much, is the autonomous side of it, right? The idea that I'm going to, turn these models on and have them tell me exactly what to go do, that today is just, it's not there. right? Obviously, there's trust and there's credibility in a world that many of us have grown up with in decades of, you know, we want expertise, we value expertise, we want to be certain in our decisions. So, you know, you see examples today where the AI can give you the recommendation, you can see it, and you can go in and trust and try to understand it, but it doesn't necessarily completely replace the human. Just, you know, is not there today at this point, but it helps them to become more productive.
Yep. Lalit.
So I think, you know, what AI has done, or what even a computer did, was to bring acceleration, consistency, and precision, right? That's where the humans falter. So I think it's eliminated that piece. It does it very well. But then building on what Eric and Rajshri said, right, where the expectations exceed are on the autonomy part. AI is assisted. I mean, human beings will guide at the workflow stage, so they are very similar to what we have done for 70 years. We have to design that one, and then we can get the confidence of the AI decision making, so to make it faster. Where I feel the challenge, right, where the expectations are still very far off, is one on the analogous basins, right? Specifically for seismic, it's not easy because of the geological structure differences to do analogous comparisons. That's the first one. The second is on data integration, right? I know we spoke about data integration, a little bit about SLB, just like TCG. We do believe in hybrid models, physics-backed models. So we have done it very successfully, transformed India's entire data of drilling and production into cloud seamlessly. So for all 6,500 wells of ONGC, all the producing data. But the next step is how to merge OSDU to the operational data. So there are two platforms, we call it by Lumi, Lumi Data, Lumi Operations. So that is the main challenge. And I think OSDU is now a universal thing, right? After SLB donated to Shell and they took it. So this two data integration is a particular challenge as well. Subsurface tends to be a little siloed.
Okay, data integration is definitely the key.
Yeah.
Your opinion, Sujoy?
I'll just give a parallel. I was learning AI through a course. So I used something called Nano GPT with a CPU. So what we did was we ingested Shakespeare's theatre, let's say 4 paras of Shakespeare theatre into that, and you see what results come out of Nano GPT. Trash in 5 iterations, in 50 iterations, some words of non-relevance in 5,000 iterations, 50,000 iterations, it starts generating Shakespearean style theatre. So you need hell of a lot of iterations in this. This we cannot forget. Secondly, as we all discussed, you need certain guardrails to understand that what is coming out is relevant. So it's not easy to move it to an autonomous platform or even near autonomous. And let us be honest in admitting that the world globally is more on the POC platform now, validating things, testing models, and it has not moved to a production stage thoroughly. Maybe in bits and pieces we have. As I also said, we also have done a small area, but the world is very, very vast. It needs time. And data integration is very easy to talk. Shell will never share a data with BP. It does not happen so easily. It needs a complete change of mindset. And that would take time to come because all of us try to hold on to the data thinking that I am powerful, but possibly we both had shared, we would have both become much more powerful. It's not easy. It will take some time to come, but it is possible to get results provided we accept the fact that we have to co-create this. It cannot be done by a set of data scientists and the exploration team or the ENP team sits completely separate. SLB stays away from it. If you co-create, results will be fabulous. So that is another piece which is needed. A classic example was this HPCL refinery piece. Our team, their team together developed it. So the ownership on HPCL side was also very high. It is our product. So that has to come in to get good results. But I'm sure over time, since the models are moving very fast, getting reformed, the computation part is taken for granted. It will happen. Only thing, how much of knowledge, as he rightly said, there are certain things which are beyond the logic. So possibly data can give you results, but whether you would believe would need a bit more validation over a period of time. But it is possible. And I've seen this happen. That is what I'm saying. We did maths, 1 plus 2 plus 10 plus, rubbish it throws out. The moment it understands the structure, it's absolutely on the dot. So it needs a bit of guidance, hand-holding, and then it can happen. But there is a bit of time to apply in areas where results are very different if it goes wrong. It needs that amount of caution and hand-holding definitely.
Yeah, I guess I can try to summarize it in a good way. First, AI is not, I'm a geoscientist, so for me, AI seems very disruptive, it might take away my job. So for now, it seems that AI is not really the disruptive. It's something that will work hand in hand with the existing subsurface teams in the companies. Another is data integration. And in data integration, of course, global integration is probably far-fetched dream. But if we look at the scale of integration, maybe Eric, question to you. Can we, scale this at the asset level? We can move it, to, I don't know, to a basin level. Is it possible? Or even country level? But as Sujoy mentioned, sharing the data among operators is probably not a possibility right now. So what is, I think we're running out of time, but what is the scale? Yeah.
No, but I think it was mentioned, right? I think within the operators, right, the scale has reached the system level, right? The argument that taking on and using cloud and compute is the standard today, right? So from that standpoint, it's there for the taking, and the ability to apply the technology now. Sharing across the borders and across the operators is probably a tough one.
Yeah.
But clearly within the platforms that have been established and leveraging the compute and what's possible today, it's for certain.
Yep, I think we can conclude with this. Thank you so much for a very insightful session, very insightful for myself as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Largely domestic consumers as of now. Yes. We have very rare example of some commercial activities being covered. I think the most important thing is bringing more productive applications into the fold of the consumers for a microgrid. So I think they need to be designed in a way that they not only cover the residential requirements, but also small, applications like workshops, rice mills, whatever can be there in the rural area. We need to identify that and then build a cluster to include that, and maybe a small industry. You're having a small lathe, we just look at the requirement and see, because we should not be burdening, since we are burdening it with, burdening the residential consumers with a high tariff, and therefore the issues are arising. I think that would be something that I would want to do.
Having a clear definition of cluster, getting combination of consumers, residential, plus a few industries, I think that creates the scale, minimum viable scale for this to be affordable.
It would make it more affordable.
So like same question, what will be your one action to make it real?
I think the statements from Mr. Valla and Mr. Misra, I'll go with the same flow. So basically, for microgrid to sustain, the cost has to come down. multiple assets where the cost can reduce. And to make it happen, probably the DISCOMs are the best people who can do it. Think not just the cost of electricity, but also a power which is reliable, which can be supplied across the industry. So like if you have our own power plant, like today what C&I consumer does, definitely it's going to be costlier, whereas somebody like a DISCOM doing a multiple plants like this and supplying to various consumers, I think that can be much cheaper. The power can be more reliable, efficient, clean. So I think that is something I would like that the DISCOMs should change the way they are looking at microgrids today, so that this can be penetrated quite fast.
Mr. Mishra, any thoughts from your side on this topic?
If you see the one point, what you're saying, our basically what our traditional way of doing the power generated in one place and bringing it through transmission to the remote place, that concept needs to be changed for the renewables. That mindset needs to be changed. And second most important point, because these organizations have proved that they have supplied the power with such type of arrangement despite of no support from the government. So we need to support them. And what they are simply asking, they are asking instead of putting the separate their wire setup, they want to use existing wire setup before the transformer. That thing needs to be provided. Instead of those who are responsible, they not to become the guardian of the system, they become the facilitator of the system. Once that mindset will change, then only this can be done.
No, excellent. I think just two big takeaways from me in this conversation. One, it is not a choice, and in India is uniquely placed versus other markets. We have a massive demand. There is a requirement. We need to, it's not a choice between either utility scale power and microgrids. There is a need for microgrids to occupy a very critical space. Second, it comes down to affordability, and we discussed parts of the affordability equation that needs to be put forth. How do you define the minimum viable scale? It has to be a combination, because you cannot take a system to mainstream by making it 2x more expensive than what's available in the grid. It just creates dissonance in the system. And third, for the first time, I think every other place we hear that you need to deregulate here, Mr. Bhalla, you need to put some guardrails around what is fair play here, right? And how do you make sure that it goes mainstream? I heard a lot of optimism about this, but I also heard there's a lot of work and for everyone to come forward with a much clearer framework of how this can become useful. There are clearly use cases that are emerging where this can be beneficial, whether it's on the consumer side or on the CNI side or commercial side. It is not just access; it can be a source of good quality and affordable power, working in tandem with the utility and centralized power systems. With that, I would like to call upon to thank all of you, to thank the panel here. Wonderful having all of you speak about it so passionately, and thank you everyone for your patience in hearing us out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What, take it out? Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Leadership Spotlight session at India Energy Week. It's a pleasure to have you here as we dive into one of the most dynamic and consequential energy transitions underway through our topic of discussion, this wind and solar opportunity, realizing the dual potential of scaling India's renewables outlook. There is an energy transition underway as we speak, with wind and solar technologies playing a key role in it. More than 90% of the new capacity additions are coming from these technologies globally. India is also a frontrunner, where last year alone, we saw about 49 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity added, including hydro. Next year, which is already here, in 2026 as well, we see another 50 gigawatts of capacity expected to be added in India. This is driven by the cost economics, as well as economies of scale, as well as policy. There are targets of over 600 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel capacity to be added by the year of fiscal year 2032, which will take India to about 68% share of non-fossil fuels in its power mix by that year. With this scaling up, however, there come challenges which we need to address through policy, through industry initiative and investments. In our session today, we will be discussing some of those challenges as well as solutions to them to drive the next stage of India's energy transition. I would first like to introduce our esteemed panelists. We are joined by Mr. Santosh Kumar Sarangi, Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy for Government of India. Mr. Sarit Maheshwari, CEO at NTPC Green Energy Limited. I think he's, okay, he has dropped off. My apologies. Mr. Gyanesh Chaudhary, Chairman and MD at Vikram Solar. Mr. Eric Solheim, President, International Advisory Board at Green Hydrogen India. And Mr. Aditya Pyasi, CEO at Indian Wind Turbine Manufacturers Association. And it's a pleasure for me, Ankita Chauhan, to be moderating today's session. I am Director at Global Clean Tech Supply Chain Solutions at Wood Mackenzie. So to kick off today's session, I would want to first come to you, Mr. Sarangi, and ask you about what kind of policy drivers are now essential now that we have already achieved commercialization of wind and solar technologies. What would the next stage of this energy transition would look like in the current climate where there are geopolitical constraints? There is emphasis on building not only accelerated renewable deployment, but also build resilient supply chains. So in that way, how do you see India progressing in this direction?
As you correctly pointed out, the initial set of policy challenges before India were to rapidly expand deployment. And we have now scaled up from about 2 gigawatt of solar deployment to about 137 gigawatt by now. And similarly, from about 25 gigawatt of wind in 2014 to about 55 gigawatt now. And if you look at the extent of total non-fossil fuel installation, it has gone up to 267 gigawatt. So going forward, in our ambition to reach 500 gigawatt by 2030, we can't keep focusing only on capacity expansion, but also at the way in which we are able to balance the grid integration challenges and use of technology for smoothing the integration of RE into the entire grid system. So in this context, a lot of our future policies will, current as well as future policies, are going to focus on ways of effective grid integration and also address the supply chain resilience. So in this context, the PLI that we had done for the entire solar value chain is something that we are following up on. And in addition to that, there are a couple of areas in which the dependence on critical mineral technologies is crucial. And to that extent, we are working closely with the National Critical Mineral Mission to ensure that some of the critical mineral related technologies, the refining processing happens in India. And in the entire value chain of solar and wind, how do we attain a substantial level of indigenization so that import dependence on particular territories or particular geographies substantially declines? So on this, we will be working more and more to ensure that ingot wafer polysilicon manufacturing takes off in a big manner in India. Similarly, in wind turbine, we have achieved a substantial indigenization in nacelle as well as tower manufacturing. But going forward, generator, gearbox, special bearings, in all of these special castings which are required for wind turbines, we will be working and seeing how policies could be oriented for ensuring more and more domestic manufacturing. In the third area of policy focus on greater adoption of RE by citizens, our focus on schemes like PM Surya Ghar, PM Kusum is going to be there. And as more and more distributed RE comes into picture, the DISCOMs will also have to be empowered to handle a large injection of RE in a distributed manner. So in that context, initiatives like digital twin, where DISCOMs have a clear visibility of congestion in different transmission lines within their jurisdiction, and implementation of renewable energy management system, distributed renewable energy management system is going to be a priority for us. So these are some of the policy initiatives which are going to drive RE expansion in future.
So, coming to you, Mr. Chaudhary, Mr. Sarangi talked about vertical integration of supply chains. So, India already has built significant capacity in terms of module manufacturing and is now accelerating towards building reliance in cells. How do you see the further vertical integration of India's supply chains, and what role Vikram Solar can play in that?
Thank you so much. I think Sir has really put it clearly in terms of what India is aiming for. I think what I feel is that early adoption for India was also a blessing, and also it raised some gaps in terms of where we were heading. While initially there was a capacity constraint, and then we had a lot of import challenges associated with not having a defined ecosystem. And I'm talking early 2000s, when we were really building the sector. In 2010 we had the Jawaharlal Nehru solar mission come out, and then we quadrupled the target as soon as the new government took shape in 2014. So the appetite has been significantly growing. However, the latent mismatches that we saw with respect to dependence on imports versus creating our domestic ecosystem. Subsequently, the government policies, I would say that while there were policies around creation of the manufacturing base with the PLI and the various schemes, there was a also consistent focus on building the markets, like the PM Kusum, as Sir said. So all of this put together gave India the position of today being the third largest, soon to be the second largest renewable deployer. And I think with a clear focus on creating consistent front and back-ended value chains, creating the ecosystem, building some of these policy initiatives to support that. India does not need capacity purely, and this Sarangi sir also iterated. We need access to technology, larger access to global markets now, because we are making in India and we are making the best in India. I have no doubt about that. I have personally been in this sector for over 2 decades, and I've seen the transition. We used to struggle for manpower, we used to struggle for efficient resources, and today the world is looking at us as an alternative to China, and we must capture this. This is a huge opportunity. So, and Vikram is here. We are a part of this for the long haul, and we will support all the ambitions that India has.
Great.
Thank you.
So coming to you, Mr. Solheim, I would like to frame this as India is right now looking at building and deepening of its supply chains. What role can policy play in that? And also what lessons can India learn from someone like China who has deep expertise in that? What kind of lessons we can bring in over here and to build on the supply chains, as well as not only for meeting the local supply chains, but also become a regional hub of manufacturing?
Thank you so much for having me. And first of all, I really like to congratulate everyone in the meeting room, and in particular the ministry, because India is now the third largest provider of renewable energy in the world. I'm pretty confident you will also surpass the United States of America to be the second largest producer of renewable energy in the world. And that's such a fantastic positive achievement. Of course, we should set targets to do even more in the future, but we can also congratulate ourselves with this massive achievement. And I've traveled quite a lot across India and seen some of these facilities, and they are remarkable. Let me just point to one. In the state of Andhra Pradesh, the Greenco Group has now developed the first integrated solar, wind, and hydropower as battery facility in the world. It works like that in daytime, and because Andhra Pradesh is blessed with the sun, you pump up the water from the lower to the higher reservoir in the dam. This is not a hydropower plant, there's no river, it's just an artificial battery. And then you release the water at night, and then you get 24 hours energy, 365 days a year. Whether the sun is shining or not, you have the hydropower as the battery. These, just to understand the size of this, I just came here from Sri Lanka. That one plant in Andhra Pradesh is larger than the entire grid in Sri Lanka, a nation with 23 million inhabitants. So this is big, big, big. There is nothing like that in the United States of America. There's nothing like this in Europe. Only China has something which can be compared with the development in Andhra Pradesh. And that's just one shining example. Solar energy is now the cheapest energy anywhere in the world. If you switch from coal to solar, you save money. Back in the days, it was an enormous cost. You needed to be very, very rich to afford solar. Well, now you save money doing it. I was in UP speaking to some people who were running small green mills. In the past, they paid 40,000 Indian rupees a month for diesel. Now they pay 15,000 Indian rupees a month for solar. Well, you don't need to be an environmentalist to want to make that switch. You just do it for your family and for your business and for the community. It's simply good business. So solar will be the dominant power in the 21st century, but added wind, hydropower, geothermal, maybe nuclear, other will be added, but solar will be the dominant. But let me then point to three major areas which we need to think about. One is government regulations. That's critical everywhere. Without the right government regulation, every renewable energy will flop. In Europe, frankly, we struggle a lot simply to get the permits. If a company cannot get the permit, it cannot establish a solar farm or a wind farm. And that system is now so horribly bureaucratic, takes so long time that it slows down the process enormously. It takes much longer time to get the permit than to construct the renewable energies. These need to change, and Prime Minister Modi, of course, has done fantastic work in India to cut red tape, but more can be done to make the government system and the policy working even more efficiently. Second is that renewable energy demands a lot of land. The largest facility in India is in the Kavda Desert in Gujarat. Adani is building that. That's the absolute perfect place, because it's a salty desert. There's nothing there. No one was living there. There's not even a straw. There's not even a camel, not even a sheep, nothing. So very easy to build a large plant. But of course, you cannot build that plant in Bihar or in UP. There simply is no land available to build something like that. It can happen in Gujarat, it can happen in Rajasthan, maybe in Madhya Pradesh, but it can not happen in the heavily populated parts of India. There you need to integrate with the local people in a completely different way, maybe building it in the agriculture, building on smaller plots, and everywhere working with the local people. If we don't do that, we will always fail. The local people don't see benefits of our installation, we will fail. That was the massive mistake we did back in the days in my nation, Norway. We thought rolling out windmills was just a practical issue, and we failed to consult with the local people, and all of a sudden they said, no thanks, we don't want this. And of course, there's no way you can send in the army or the police to force this upon people. You need to consult. So I think a key lessons learned, at least from Europe, is there must be windfalls for the local community. When you build something in their community, make sure that some of the economic surplus from that ends up in that community. And the third big issue is China. China is now so totally dominant on everything green that the rest of the world need to factor in how do we relate to that. China is 60% of everything. Solar, wind, hydropower, electric batteries, electric cars, metros, high-speed rail, whatever you can mention, China is at a minimum 60%. In the solar industry, China is probably 90% globally. In batteries, it's 60, 70%, and the batteries which are not made in China are nearly all made in Korea. So it's China and Korea totally dominating global battery business. There's not one battery factory in Europe. Hardly any in the United States of America. It's only China and Korea. And this means that if you want to go green, the relationship to China is critical. The head of Airbus, this huge European airplane company, just said that Europe needs to make 1,000 joint ventures with China. That's the only way we can get the technology to go green fast enough. And India also needs to contemplate its relationship to China, how we can bring in Chinese companies, how we can make joint ventures, but of course make that as a platform for them producing and creating their jobs in India. Make it in India, as Prime Minister Modi says, but you
Thanks,
cannot
Eric.
hardly do it in this.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, I'll just last sentence. You can hardly do that without China, but of course the focus must be how it can happen in India.
Totally agree with you that timely permits can really help in moving forward the acceleration of project execution, and we have a lot to learn from China in terms of how we can build that momentum. Now I would request Mr. Aditya Pyasi to add the perspective from the wind side. Wind has had a long journey in India starting from the 90s onwards and has seen several phases of building of capacity as well as manufacturing. Now, as we sit in 2026, there is a further deepening of supply chain is happening at the component level, where Indian manufacturers and Indian industry is not only meeting the local demand, but is also seen as a important stakeholder globally. So in that view, how do you think is the future look like for the wind industry and how it can leverage on the global increasing demand?
Thanks, Ankita, and thanks for having me on this esteemed panel. I think a very pertinent question, specifically from the perspective that manufacturing and jobs is at the center stage in midst of a geopolitical storm that we are living through. And I firmly believe that in this manufacturing, in this energy transition, wherein manufacturing would give the jobs, wherein AI is coming, and geopolitically we are in a turmoil. Policy is the first line of defense. And I'm really happy to see that within the last year, I think we have made tremendous strides, thanks to the ministry who has taken the leadership, and we have made tremendous strides in that policy and decision making. For example, we have seen ALMM solar, ALMM wind, as in for manufacturing in India, to the extent that some time back people used to think whether manufacturing can be done here. Now all the manufacturers are looking at where to set up the shop in India. We have traversed that mostly in 1.5 years. Second, leadership at such a level that even GST reforms have happened because of that representations. And though we might have seen in the media that the impact is only 10 to 15 paisa per unit, but let me tell you, I've seen distribution at a granular level. The industry may not get that much of benefit of reduction in GST. The entire benefit of it would be passed to the domestic consumers, and 50 to 60 paisa of reduction in tariff might happen to the domestic consumers, which is a big thing for a country like India. Third, a silent revolution is happening. All this domestic content thing that we are talking about, at the policy level, the ministry has decided that we'll have the portal which will track the domestic content. We are working closely on that, and I think the supply chain will get a lot of confidence because of that. We are even deploying AI in the development of that platform. So I think very futuristic steps are being taken. But important thing is all these things are happening while there is limited scope or authority available under the present act. That probably needs to be looked at. When this act, which is the point of start for all the policy making, it was designed at a time when deregulation of generation and open access was the need of the hour. Today, energy transition and promotion of renewable energy is the need of the hour. So a very pertinent time that the government takes a look at how this act is to be modified. There is a bill there. We are also working with the government. Substantial powers and authority should be given for renewable energy decision making and regulation making. I think that bridge, if we cross, I think 2030 and 2047 targets would be a matter of time, and automatically capacity will give boost to the manufacturing and supply chain will fall in place, as it is already falling in place in last 1.5 years. That's my take.
Thank you, Aditya. The point that you touched upon, that there is an impact on costs. So there would be a certain place where all of these costs will start to transfer downstream into the PPA prices. So in that case, how do you see the challenges with creation of demand with higher PPA prices if that happens? What kind of risks do you see? Mr. Sarangate, I would ask you this question about PPA's bankability. In last year, we saw that there are challenges that we are seeing in capacity which has been bid out, is struggling to find buyers, and therefore has remained under development despite having been bid out. So what kind of challenges do you see in terms of bringing out tenders where PPAs are signed timely, those challenges are addressed, as well as the capacity to absorb higher prices in the system?
Some of the bids that you are referring to where PPA has not been signed were actually part of this drive to do a 50 gigawatt bidding by the renewable energy implementation agencies without actually taking into account the demand from the DISCOMs. So when we went to the discoms with vanilla solar or vanilla wind, we saw that the appetite for vanilla solar, which is generating electricity during only the peak solar hours or during the solar hours only, was not very high among many of the discoms. So we have asked our REIs to tweak the requirements by taking into account the demand profile of the discoms and accordingly float bids. So you would see more and more FDRE bids, RTC bids, solar plus storage bids, and solar wind hybrid profiles coming up in future. And if you look at some of the recent bids which SECI has done in the recent past, is solar plus 4 hours of storage, solar plus 6 hours of storage, where they have discovered only 3 rupees 12 paise per unit price. And these are what is being required by the discoms. So we will have to work on that. And most of these bids will now match the demand profile of the discoms, and accordingly bids will be done. In addition, there are many factors which have also driven down cost. The technology in cells and modules has led to higher efficiency modules coming into picture. With the recent R&D with regard to perovskite, we anticipate that if that succeeds, perovskite solar modules come into being, which are likely in another 2 to 3 years, 4 years, the unit price can come down to as low as 1 rupee 40 paise per unit from the current 2 rupees 40 paise per unit. Similarly, if you look at battery energy storage systems, the cost has gone down by about 89% in last 1 decade. And if you look at last 1 year, it has gone down by more than 40%. So a combination of technological innovation along with the reduction in storage cost has enabled the solar plus battery energy storage system cost to be low. And from that point of view, what Mr. Eric Solem was pointing out, that solar is going to be the dominant player within RE, but more and more FDRE, RTC would require a judicious combination of solar, wind, and battery energy storage system. And I believe that in course of time, the combination of solar, wind, and battery energy storage system would be much, much cheaper than the new coal-based power and would prove to be one of the most stable, reliable alternative to coal-based power. So this base load argument for coal is also going to dilute in course of time with greater induction of battery energy storage system. And keeping that in view, India's focus on promoting battery energy storage system, both the prevalent varieties like lithium ion as well as sodium ion, as well as flow batteries and long duration energy storage system is going to be high in the next couple of years.
Great. Coming to you, Mr. Chaudhary, there has been so far till 2025 a race to the bottom, as Mr. Sarangi pointed out, that component prices have been coming down significantly. But now that trend seems to have reverted. Polysilicon prices are going up, lithium prices are going up in the global markets. How does the manufacturing industry in India is going to take that into account, how those costs are going to be absorbed, and what kind of impact do you see here at the prices in the market and the demand as well?
Thank you so much. I think, while localization of solar panels as well as some amount of cell capacity has made us a little more resilient, but more than 80% wafer and polysilicon are still coming from China or around. Other than that, the kind of commodity prices swing that we are seeing, how it impacts, copper, silver, all of that. I think all of this has led to this price modification. While we all know that India is a frugal nation, we want everything the best but also the cheapest, which is absolutely the way to do it, because we are a large nation and we have a lot to achieve. However, in this entire volatile scenario, uh, what is missing is probably some sort of standardizations in terms of what is it that is expected from manufacturers like us, and how can we make sure that we deliver the best over a long period of time, notwithstanding the volatility. You see, in the last 20 years, I've seen probably 20 such cycles. And as the appetite grows, not just India, but globally, as the appetite is growing, so the volatility cycles are also impacting much more. And to be able to absorb that, I think some sort of stabilization exercise needs to be done, so that large capacities can definitely see the light of day, rather than we look at a lot of bidding and a lot of work happening, but without upstream resilience, building cohesive ecosystems for import substitution, and therefore also creating markets in the export scenario. Both of these will help mitigate some of these volatile scenarios. Price is an absolute function, and I think in this current scenario, we are seeing, apart from obviously commodity prices, we see China taking some serious positions in the global market, where they have restricted capacities, they've restricted production to ensure that there is some sort of a semblance to price standardization within their framework. They have removed certain subsidies which were harming manufacturers like us to be present in the global markets. So all of this has made some hardening of prices, but I feel that over a long term, these will be improved, but also the market should be able to absorb these changes, because these are real, and these are not they should not be considered as manufacturers trying to make hay while the sun shines. That's not how it is. These are real challenges that across the value chain everyone is facing, and we have to face them.
Definitely. There are real costs to the project implementation, and upstream resilience is going to help us in going forward in addressing some of these challenges. Eric, coming to you, we have seen solar and wind has largely achieved commercialization. There is a great role for these technologies to play in the future of energy transition, but now we are entering in another stage of it, where we need further deepening with adoption of further clean tech. So what are those options that globally are being discussed for adoption, for deepening of energy transition beyond wind and solar, and what does that next phase look like?
First of all, the role of government is absolutely essential in all these. Unless you have a strong government, it frames the market, set the rules, you will fail. And also, government has a key role in making clusters, offering opportunities for different businesses to locate in the same area, bring in maybe research institutes, universities into the same area, so you get an innovative process. Without a strong government, this cannot happen. And mind you, this is one of the advantages of India. In Europe, they are changing the ministers by the day. We have the three main nations of Europe. No one knows whether the prime minister or president will survive this year. It's a rotating circus like that, and that makes no leadership possible. Prime Minister Modi has been in head of India for the last 12 years. My prediction is that he will be re-elected next time there is an election also, if he runs for another term. Even those who do not like the BJP at least should realize that these create a certain level of stability and leadership, which is absolutely critical for a nation who want to grow. So the role, I really want to emphasize the role of the government, even of course with nearly all of the innovations will happen in the market, and it's a strong government with a market-based economy. That's the way forward for everyone. Solar will be the dominant energy, and that's not a matter of ideology, it's a matter of price. While there may be fluctuations, the cost of solar energy is now 5% of what it was in 2005, maybe 10% of what it was in 2010. So it's an enormous drop, and that's why it will be dominant. But all the others will add, and you need batteries. Hydropower can play the role as batteries, as I described for Andhra Pradesh, but there will be 10 such facilities like the one in Andhra Pradesh by 2030 in India. Greenco will make 5, and Adani will make 5. At least that's the plan, and I think they will manage that. That's using hydropower as battery, adding artificially man-made batteries made by humans, and adding to this, green hydrogen will also play a role, because hydrogen is of course a way of storing energy. And hydrogen, I don't think will play a major role in cars, for example. They will be all of them will be electric. But for aviation, for shipping, and for steel and other industries which really need high temperature, then their hydrogen will be important. And again, that cannot happen without government, because investors will not invest in these sectors unless they believe there is a demand. But of course, there will not be any demand unless someone is producing the green hydrogen. And green hydrogen is not meaningful in small scale. Solar is meaningful both in enormous scale and in small scale. Green hydrogen can only work in big scale, and that's why the role of the government to bring together the main businesses, set the rules, and initiate the process of matching demand and supply is absolutely critical for development of green hydrogen.
Definitely. Coming to you, Aditya. So, wind for wind technologies, what do you see at the next stage? We are seeing globally that larger and bigger turbines are being built, but for India, we have average turbine sizes which are much lower so far. So is there further acceleration towards larger turbines in India as well, which meet the requirements of the wind speeds that we have? And also, I would like to ask you about offshore wind. How do you see the momentum towards offshore wind in India right now?
Yeah, very pertinent questions, Ankita. I think as far as sizes of turbines are concerned, I wish my friend Dr. Katyal was here, and I think he keeps speaking all the time the right thing, that the size of turbine in India is to be designed as per the speed of wind in India to harness the maximum CUF. And the wind speeds in India are not very high, in the range of 5, 7, 8, usually like that, except some places in Tamil Nadu where we have category 1 sites. So rather than focusing only on the size, usually size gives higher CUF, better usage of land, but there is a need for optimization. So I think 3.5, 4, 5 we are reaching. I think it's good. Need not be in a rush to just increase the size for the sake of increasing size. Further studies on twisting of how much twist the blade should have, how much curve the blade should have, all those things, and how sturdy it is as with respect to the Indian climate, etc. That is more important. Finally, we have to harness the highest CUF, as close to the bed's limit as we can. And as far as offshore is concerned, I think we've had multiple rounds of discussion in both in the state of Gujarat as well as Tamil Nadu. We are working closely with the state governments. That is one of my key priorities, to reach out to the states. I think in Gujarat, we had a very good discussion, and I think my fellow panelists are there in the audience also, that the wind speeds in Gujarat are, even in offshore, are less than 10, mostly 8-ish kind of. So starting with near shore would be the best thing to do. There is a 3000 megawatt potential for this wind. 50 megawatt pilot project has been probably started by Gujarat GPCL. That is the way. That way we will get the prize for the first project. So I think nearshore we should start with, and then dabble, at least in Gujarat, further with offshore if possible. Tamil Nadu, yes, there is potential. I think there is a need to invite more and more pure play players. And I've been reaching out to international fraternity. We have had a MOU with Stiftung Offshore, Germany. We're working closely if we can have some pure play developers coming on board. You know, policy and everything we are trying. There is a VGF given, but I think the developers are still not there. We need to have some collaboration from international fraternity to make the way through. Thanks.
Definitely. So with this question, I would like to come back to Mr. Sarangi again, that we heard about all these new technologies, green hydrogen, offshore wind, electrolyzers in India. So how is MNRE looking at this space of new technologies? And we saw that there were a few tenders in the past for offshore wind, which have not yet been closed. So how do you see India can help in kicking off of these technologies, and what are the challenges in their adoption? Is it infrastructure? Is it business models? And where those solutions lie in enabling those technologies?
I think in all of this, both in terms of facilitating infrastructure development, in ensuring policy roadmaps, in creating incentives for the private sector to have that confidence to get into a particular area. So our National Green Hydrogen Mission aims at doing that. And when it set out a roadmap of 5 million tons, we did that tender or we did that bidding for green ammonia, which was part of domestic market creation effort by the government, where we assured that 7,24,000 tons of green ammonia will be supplied to fertilizer plants. Similarly, we are also working with our oil refineries to ensure that 2 lakh tons of green hydrogen is consumed by them, which will give our domestic players enough assurance to do their FIDs. So we understand that an industry can't really develop only depending on an export opportunity, but would also require some degree of domestic market offtake. And to that extent, market creation is something, whether it is in solar and wind power or whether it is in green hydrogen, we have been working. Similarly, derivatives of green hydrogen in terms of methanol, SAF, green ammonia have huge opportunities. And we are working with multiple ministries, Ministry of Port and Shipping, Ministry of Transport, to ensure its usage in mobility, Ministry of Steel to ensure its usage in hard-to-abate sectors. In addition, use of latest technologies in transmission to lay transmission lines quickly so that evacuation of electricity happens quickly is something that we will have to work on. As Mr. Passy was saying, the wind energies face a lot of issues with regard to land acquisition, ROWs. So in this, looking at transmission towers like monopoles, which have a lesser footprint, is something that will have to be expedited in the Indian context. And also working with the state governments to have quicker policies with regard to the rates which will be disbursed for land acquisition is something that we are doing in association with our industry leaders. And going forward, use of more and more digital technology, AI-based forecasting models, especially for the wind sector, because forecasting, proper forecasting is required for a proper scheduling, which has to be given to the grid managers. And also working on India energy stack, where a lot of our consumers today will become big prosumers tomorrow. So the power trading is going to be hugely decentralized in future, and getting our systems ready to a decentralized power trading model where I can sell to my neighbors, I can tomorrow get electricity from my neighbor, is something that India will have to prepare on. So in multiple directions, use of technology is being expedited, whether it is in terms of deployment, whether it is in terms of transmission lines, or whether it is in terms of enabling discoms to use DERMS kind of facilities or use of India Energy Stack using AI-enabled technologies.
Definitely. Coming back to manufacturing now, manufacturing is very energy intensive, and for adding new capacities, you need significant investments as well. So how, probably this question for both Mr. Chaudhary and Mr. Pyasi, that how are we addressing the challenges with respect to the availability of the infrastructure, as well as energy requirement and financing for building more capacity in India? First, Mr. Chaudhary.
I can go first. So as far as the appetite for setting up large manufacturing infrastructure goes, it's just going through the roof, I feel. We ourselves are setting up a 200-acre project with 15 gigawatt of integrated manufacturing facility over a period of the next 2 years. And the challenge is generally what we see and we face on the ground is, available of common infrastructure. Now, if you look at cell manufacturing, there is a huge consumption of water. There is a huge requirement of water treatment. Now, 10 years ago, I was at a industrial campus in Germany. It's called the Solar Valley, where there were a lot of solar manufacturing companies all integrated. So a lot of infrastructure was commonly placed. Like there was a common ETP, effluent treatment. There were common gas facilities. There were common, tapping in and tapping out facilities. Those sort of things help industries plug and play. When we are talking about technology in solar, specifically in the current context, we see that there is anyway there is upgrades and modifications, like Sir talked about perovskite. Obviously that is 3 to 4 years away, as he also said. But there are other upgrades and changes that we are constantly doing to keep ourselves up to speed with the global standards. Now, to also worry about the external environment at such a great extent is somewhat time consuming. So when India wants to pivot towards latest technology, why is it taking longer? It's taking longer because the industrial ecosystem, the industrial clusters, the hubs are not prepared for such advanced manufacturing technologies and creating a common infrastructure in place. Now, as far as power is concerned, I think as far downstream, solar cell and module, probably the power consumption is still manageable. As we go upstream into wafer and polysilicon, power is a raw material. Now, how many states in India are able to offer the cheapest source of energy compared to Chinese prices? Now, we want to compete with the Chinese prices, but our raw material, which is power, is not competitive. So either we integrate our own solar power plants to power these manufacturing plants, that adds huge cost to the overall capital outlay. But without that, competing is difficult. I want to say almost impossible. So these sort of ecosystems will definitely enhance our speed to market, which is absolutely essential in today's time. Thank you.
Thank you. We are just about over time, so please keep your comments concise.
I'll just try to sum up in 2 minutes. Very pertinent point, Ganeshi, and I think the need of the hour for Indian manufacturing is to look at availability of raw materials. And as Eric rightly pointed out, he's saying 60% of all raw materials are with China. I would go to the extent of 80%. I've handled commodities for a long period of time, and I think for all commodities, we just look at China. Very important to have the availability of steel, special graded steel, whether we can give the steel industry the necessary incentives to develop it. Otherwise, we will be stopped. Carbon fiber, which is very important for the wind industry. I think we are totally dependent on China. Existing facilities have also gone away in India. Third, raw materials like copper. I think we are totally unprepared. All stocks are either in US and China has the capability of manufacturing. In fact, India has gone down by 50% in manufacturing production of copper. So these are some key things. We are lucky to have Sarangi sir, who has been with the Ministry of Commerce and he understands, so I need not speak more. I think if this is addressed, we will safeguard ourselves. As I said, policy is the first line of defense that we can do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pyasi. Eric, finally, to close with you, can you please share in very concise manner in 1 minute about the access to finance and infrastructures and its role in addressing the need for energy transition?
Look, my final comment is very simple. We are at a turning point in human history. Not everyone realizes, but history will see this as an absolute turning point. Last year, the entire world produced more solar and wind than we produced coal energy. Last year, the use of coal went down in both China and India. That happened during COVID, yes, for bad reasons. But last year it happened for good reasons, which of course is that the renewables now dominant market. In the past, if a nation wanted to develop, there was only one way. It was fossil fuels. No nation could develop and make their population affluent. No nation can bring everyone out of poverty without fossil fuels. But that was the past. Now, and that's what Prime Minister Modi is speaking about all the time, there's one way forward, how to combine ecology and economy, make it one, how to bring every Indian out of poverty, how to make every Indian a part of the wild middle class, but doing it by going green. And our parents and grandparents didn't have that option. But now it's available. And that's the enormous opportunity now for India. And that's why we can end up here being very optimistic. This will be the future of India. And India will just move ahead, combining ecology and economy, and becoming very soon the second largest renewable power in the world.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think India is at a very cusp of leapfrogging towards the next phase of energy transition with all the technology options that are available. We didn't touch upon a lot of the areas which I would have loved to talk about, but we are over time. So I would like to thank my esteemed panelists for their comments and their knowledgeable views about this sector. With this, I would like to close. We talked about policy, economics, we talked about infrastructure and financing challenges and the road ahead for energy transition and its role in the global decarbonization. So thank you everyone for listening in.
Thank you. Great moderation.